to pick it up. He looked at Lin Fong. What exactly are you implying? Am I not capable of supporting my daughter? That's not what I meant. I'm still Guogua's biological mother, and wanting a better life for her isn't wrong, is it? Fong Shuo shrugged. No, you're right. You certainly have that right. Lin Fong took a deep breath. About what I mentioned last time, fighting for custody of Guogua. I've given it careful thought, and I've decided to give up. Fong Shuo was slightly taken aback. He hadn't expected Lin Fong to voluntarily give up custody. But then again, he knew she wouldn't abandon something so important without conditions. Sure enough, Lin Fong continued. But I have one condition. A faint smile tugged at the corner of Fong Shuo's mouth. And what condition is that? Chapter 97. Too selfish. Lin Fong said. I hope you can convince Long Wanqing to invest in Shifei Industries. If you can make it happen, then I will give up my claim for Guogua's custody from this day forward. Fong Shuo opened his mouth, about to speak, when suddenly Guan Yunshuai's phone rang. Glancing at the caller ID, he showed an expression of disbelief. He quickly picked up the phone and pressed answer. 1 minute later, his face lit up with immense excitement. Unable to contain his joy, he told Lin Fong. Fong, Longjia has decided to invest in our company. Lin Fong was stunned, then immediately broke into ecstatic surprise. What? Longjia is investing in us? Really? Yesterday Long Wanqing clearly said she wouldn't invest. Guan Yunshuai shook his head. I don't know either. Maybe they found a profitable angle after all. Anyway, we've finally been pulled back from the brink. We can get through this crisis now. Barely suppressing her joy and excitement, Lin Fong asked in a trembling voice. How much is the investment? 3 million. Can you believe it? Exactly 3 million. Heaven never seals off all paths. It never abandons anyone. Guan Yunshuai was ecstatic. At this moment, Fong Shuo cleared his throat and said, Excuse me, may I interrupt? Lin Fong, just now you said you were willing to give up the fight for Guogua's custody, correct? I accept that. But to prevent future disputes, I'd like us to put it in writing, a formal agreement. Lin Fong gave him a disdainful look. What? Give up custody of Guogua? What are you thinking? Fong Shuo, let me tell you straight. I'll never give up custody of Guogua. You should know very well that I only offered to step aside because of the company, to get you to plead with Long Wanqing on our behalf. But now that's unnecessary. Longjia has already invested in us. Enough. Just leave. Yunshuai and I have other matters to attend to. I'm taking full custody of Guogua. If you're unwilling to back down voluntarily, then see you in court. Fong Shuo hadn't expected Lin Fong to change her tune faster than flipping a page. He hadn't wanted her or Guan Yunshuai to know he was the one who helped them. He had considered their pride. He didn't want them to feel indebted to him, which was why he specifically instructed Long Wanqing not to reveal the truth. Even so, Lin Fong's actions left him feeling cold inside. Lin Fong was becoming more and more like her family, utterly ungrateful. When she needed something from him, she willingly offered to relinquish custody. But as soon as she realized she no longer needed him, she turned around and renounced her promise instantly. Fong Shuo slowly stood up and said, If that's how it is, then we'll meet in court. I will never give up Guogua. No one can separate us. No one. With that, Fong Shuo turned and walked out of the coffee shop. Guan Yunshuai frowned involuntarily. Lin Fong, you were too impulsive. You shouldn't have confronted him face to face about Guogua's custody like that. Don't forget, he has a close relationship with Long Wanqing. What if he goes behind our backs and says something? We'd be finished. Lin Fong's face changed immediately. Then what should I do? At least keep him calm for now. Guan Yunshuai said unhappily. Now look, you've made things worse. It'll be hard to fix this. Lin Fong bit her lower lip, saying nothing. After a moment, Guan Yunshuai said, At this point, all we can do is take it one step at a time. For now, don't provoke him further. Once the Longjia funds come through and we're past this crisis, you can sue him however you want. Lin Fong nodded, though she still felt uneasy. She was afraid Fong Shuo might really go to Long Wanqing and say damaging things. But things didn't turn out as badly as they feared. Longjia officially launched the project and quickly signed the investment agreement. The deal was finalized. Longjia promised to transfer the investment funds to Shifei Industries' account soon. With everything settled, Lin Fong, who had been anxious for so long, finally breathed a sigh of relief. The contract was signed. The money would arrive shortly. The crisis at Shifei Industries was over. Now that the danger had passed, Lin Fong naturally turned her thoughts back to Guogua's custody. When she returned home, she immediately called the company's legal advisor and asked in great detail about child custody battles. According to the analysis, her chances of winning the case were quite high. First, she was the mother, and the child had only just started first grade. It was more appropriate for a young child to stay with the mother. Second, Fong Shuo's income source was unclear, possibly derived from illegal activities. Lastly, Fong Shuo's marital status was uncertain. Although he had a close relationship with Long Wanqing, they weren't anywhere near marriage. Who he might end up with in the future remained unknown. The above 3 points were Fong Shuo's greatest weaknesses. Any one of them could be the decisive factor that would completely destroy him in court. Coupled with Lin Fong being the mother, the judgment would naturally lean in her favor. So her chances of winning were still very high. Lin Fong immediately decided to file a lawsuit requesting a change in Guogua's custody. She asked her company's legal advisor to recommend a lawyer who specialized in custody battles, determined to take her daughter back by all means. Meanwhile, when Fong Shuo received the legal notice, he was attending a shareholder meeting. Due to the smooth and pleasant cooperation with Wei Mei expressed interest in strengthening their partnership. This was excellent news for Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company. Thus, General Manager Ding especially convened a shareholders meeting to discuss the upcoming work plan together. Since it was a shareholders meeting, Long Wanqing naturally had to attend as well. Just as they were in the middle of the meeting, Fang Shua's assistant opened the door and handed him the letter. Fang Shua opened the envelope. It was from Lin Fang's lawyer. The notice stated that Lin Fang expected Fang Shua to voluntarily relinquish custody of Guogua. If he objected or failed to respond within the specified time, she would proceed to file a lawsuit. Sitting beside Fang Shua, Long Wanqing couldn't see the full content, but she caught several key words. In an instant, she understood exactly what was going on. That woman Lin Fang truly had a heart of stone. Right after Fang Shua helped her out of trouble, she turned around and tried to take Guogua away from him through court. After quickly putting away the legal notice, Fang Shua smiled slightly at Ding Yi and said, "Sorry, Director Ding. This is a personal matter, unrelated to the company. Let's continue the meeting." The meeting ended shortly afterward, and everyone gathered their belongings and left the conference room. But Fang Shua remained seated, his face dark with anger as he stared at the lawyer's letter. Although he spoke lightly, he knew deep down that if this went to court, he was far more likely to lose than win. Moreover, having parents fight in court would be extremely detrimental to Guogua's growth. Lin Fang was simply too selfish. To snatch Guogua back, she was actually willing to sue him, and didn't even care about how Guogua felt. Before leaving, Long Wanqing deliberately turned back and glanced at Fang Shua. Then, upon returning to her office, she called Lin Fang. "Miss Lin, please come to my company for a moment." Chapter 98, Additional Clause. Lin Fang didn't understand why Long Wanqing wanted to see her, but since she had been summoned, there must be something important. So she brought Guan Yunshui along, and the two of them arrived at Long Jia in Long Wanqing's office. Smiling politely, Lin Fang said, "Miss Long, may I ask what you need? If there's anything, you could have just informed me through the project manager. There was no need for you to call me personally." Long Wanqing replied expressionlessly, "Miss Lin, I called you here because I want to discuss adding an additional clause to our investment contract." Lin Fang exchanged a confused glance with Guan Yunshui. Adding a supplementary clause to a contract. This was something that could easily be handled directly between the project lead and Guan Yunshui. Why did Long Wanqing specifically summon her? Although Lin Fang was about to become the boss's wife, within the company she still held only minor, insignificant roles. Besides, she didn't even understand contract matters. Still, she didn't dare to object, and instead kept smiling as she asked, "May I ask, Miss Long, what kind of clause you'd like to add?" Long Wanqing said coolly, "As you know, Fang Shua and I are currently in a relationship. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, we will get married. The only reason I decided to invest in Shifei is because of your connection as his ex-wife. But do you know why I, the heir to the Longhai Group, would choose someone like Fang Shua?" At this, Lin Fang froze, instinctively shaking her head. Long Wanqing let out a cold laugh. "It's because of Guogua. I adore her. She reminds me so much of my late younger sister. I want her to become my daughter. If I want Guogua to be my daughter, then I must marry Fang Shua. That means, without Guogua, my marriage to Fang Shua would lose all meaning, and thus, wouldn't be necessary at all. And if I don't marry Fang Shua, then I have no reason to continue investing in Shifei Industrial. Therefore, I demand an additional clause in the contract. Custody of Guogua must belong solely to Fang Shua." Hearing this, Lin Fang was stunned. Guan Yunshui was stunned too. They had never heard such an absurd reason for marriage in their entire lives. Long Wanqing was not only the CEO of Long Jia, but also the heiress of the Longhai Group. With her unparalleled beauty, there were surely hundreds, if not thousands, of elite young men across Jiangzhou vying for her hand in marriage. And yet this celestial beauty actually intended to marry a man with a completely mismatched background, one who had already been divorced, no less, all because of a little girl. If they hadn't heard it with their own ears, neither Lin Fang nor Guan Yunshui would have believed it possible. Yet reality forced them to accept it. And these words came straight from Long Wanqing's mouth. This was clearly no joke. Lin Fang opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but found herself completely speechless. What could she possibly say? Long Wanqing's intention was crystal clear. If Lin Fang insisted on claiming custody of Guogua, the investment would be withdrawn. To save the investment project, she must give up custody rights. But Lin Fang had no choice now. Without this funding, Shifei Industrial would have no option but to shut down. Guan Yunshui nudged her lightly with his elbow, frantically signaling with his eyes. Wasn't the answer obvious? Of course they had to agree. After a long silence, Lin Fang finally forced out the words with great difficulty. I agree. I'll give up custody of Guogua." There was no change in Long Wanqing's expression. After all, this outcome had been exactly what she anticipated. The reason she did this was purely to help Fang Shua in some way. Fang Shua was a man of loyalty and integrity. Even though Lin Fang had betrayed him, leaving him when he was down by running off with a wealthy boss, Fang Shua couldn't bring himself to be heartless. When he saw Lin Fang in trouble, he still stepped in to help. Yet Lin Fang showed no gratitude. Instead, she turned around and fought him for custody of their daughter. Even if she didn't know about Fang Shua's secret assistance, back when they divorced, Lin Fang had personally promised not to claim custody of Guogua. Now that the divorce was finalized, she went back on her word. Her character was simply despicable. Long Wanqing couldn't stand by and watch, so she directly called Lin Fang, intending to reveal that the investment was actually Fang Shua's doing. The money was being funneled to Shifei Industrial through her hands. But after making the call, she suddenly remembered. She had once promised Fang Shua not to tell Lin Fang the truth. So Long Wanqing abruptly changed her plan and decided to add a contractual clause instead. She was certain Lin Fang would accept. Then, Long Wanqing called her assistant. instructed them to include the additional clause, and made Guan Yunshui re-sign and stamp the revised contract. Meanwhile, Lin Fong made a phone call to her lawyer in Long Wanqing's presence, withdrawing the lawsuit she had submitted to court. Very well. Now that everything's settled, you may leave. Seeing that Lin Fong had withdrawn the lawsuit, Long Wanqing coldly issued her dismissal. Guan Yunshui tugged at Lin Fong's sleeve, and the two turned to walk out. But just as they reached the door, Lin Fong suddenly stopped, turned back, and said to Long Wanqing, "Miss Long, I know you're with Fong Shuo now, but there are some things you need to know." Long Wanqing asked, "What do you want to say?" "Not long ago, my daughter fell ill and was hospitalized, and we didn't have a single cent at home. Yet within just 3 days, he suddenly came up with 10,000 yuan to cover all the hospital fees. Then he told me outright that for my daughter to fully recover, she needed imported medicine. The entire course of treatment would cost 150,000. And sure enough, in less than 2 weeks, he somehow produced another 150,000. After that, he pulled out 300,000 yuan to enroll my daughter in a private school. When I asked him where he got the money, he simply said it was from his business. But tell me, what kind of legitimate business could possibly be this profitable? If such an opportunity truly existed, wouldn't everyone rush to get into it? So I have every reason to suspect he's involved in illegal or even criminal activities. Miss Long, I don't know how you met or how long you've been together, but I hope you take the time to truly understand who he is. He doesn't speak a word of truth. He'll deceive you too." Long Wanqing looked at Lin Fong coldly and said, "Yes, I admit. You were married to Fong Shuo for many years, you have a daughter together, and your time with him is dozens of times longer than mine. But being together for a long time doesn't mean you actually understand him. All you care about is yourself. You've never paid attention to him. You don't even know what he does for a living, yet you dare claim he's running an illegal operation. Your arrogance and ignorance are truly laughable. I don't wish to explain myself to you. I only want you to know, everything Fong Shuo does is completely legal. His vision is far beyond anything either of you can imagine. That's precisely why he's able to make substantial money in such a short time. I won't say any more. I'll only leave you with this. Walk away from him, and you will regret it." With that, Long Wanqing lowered her head and resumed reading her documents, no longer sparing Lin Fong a glance. Chapter 99, Team Building Event. After Lin Fong and Guan Yunshui left, Long Wanqing realized her heart was pounding fast, even her hands trembling slightly. Usually calm and collected, she couldn't understand why she was so agitated. Perhaps it was because she found Lin Fong too selfish and felt angry. Perhaps it was the nervousness of having told a lie just now. Or perhaps it was because Lin Fong had spoken so poorly of Fong Shuo, making her feel indignant. In any case, whatever the reason, Long Wanqing now felt somewhat regretful. She thought she might have meddled unnecessarily. This was Fong Shuo's personal matter, and she had no grounds to get involved. Yet, whenever she recalled Lin Fong's behavior and the words she had spoken, anger welled up inside her again. If all of Lin Fong's actions were directed toward her, Long Wanqing wouldn't have felt this upset. But since Lin Fong was targeting Fong Shuo, she couldn't suppress the fury within. After calming down, Long Wanqing herself was slightly astonished. She never interfered in others' affairs, and even when faced with the most distressing situations, she would never become emotionally overwhelmed like this. So why had she just now instinctively retorted when hearing Lin Fong slander Fong Shuo? Recalling her own words from earlier, Long Wanqing felt her face grow hot with embarrassment. How could she have said something like being willing to be Guoguo's mother? She couldn't even fathom why those words had come out of her mouth. If given another chance, she'd probably rather die than say such things again. Back at the company, Lin Fong and Guan Yunshui immediately called Fong Shuo, clearly stating that she was giving up custody rights over Guoguo. Though Fong Shuo was slightly surprised, he was delighted to hear that Lin Fong had voluntarily withdrawn. Long Wanqing remained true to her word. After signing the additional clauses, the investment funds were quickly transferred into Shufei Industries' account. With the company crisis fully resolved, Guan Yunshui was nearly jumping for joy. When the entire company learned the news, morale soared. Overjoyed, Guan Yunshui announced on the spot that there would be a team-building event that evening, mandatory for everyone. The event was booked at Jiangzhou Royal Taste KTV, known for its great value, a perfect fit for corporate gatherings. With the boss footing the bill, everyone naturally became excited. All staff chattered animatedly, except for Lin Fong, who looked sullen. Seeing her low spirits, her close friend Xiaomei walked over and asked, Fong, why so unhappy? The company crisis is over. Your marriage to boss Guan should happen soon now. You're about to become the boss's wife. What's there not to be happy about? Pouting, Lin Fong told Xiaomei everything that had happened earlier. Xiaomei exclaimed in surprise, Oh, Long Wanqing. Fong, your husband. No, your ex-husband, is quite the catch. He actually managed to hook up with Miss Long from the Long Hai Group. That's impressive. Lin Fong shot her an annoyed glare. Which side are you on anyway? Praising him now? Let me tell you, Fong Shuo is nothing but mud. No talent at all, just clinging on to women. Xiaomei laughed. Well, if he can rely on women, then so be it. I think Fong Shuo isn't bad looking. He has the charm to live off a woman. Besides, him getting close to Long Wanqing benefits you too, doesn't it? Lin Fong froze, then fell silent. Indeed, if not for Fong Shuo's connection with Long Wanqing, this investment deal might never have gone through so smoothly. In that sense, she should actually be grateful to Fong Shuo. Yet, deep down, Lin Fong just couldn't accept it. What she had hoped for most was that after their divorce, Fong Shuo would fall into poverty and ruin. Ideally, they'd run into each other by chance on the street, and she'd casually pull out 10,000 yuan, toss it to her ex-husband, then walk away with pride. But all of that was merely fantasy now. She never expected Fang Shua to end up attached to Long Wanqing. Her dream of humiliating her ex-husband was likely never going to come true. And that was precisely what angered her the most. You know, not everyone can land a wealthy heiress as a wife. It takes some skill, Xiaomei boldly declared. If I met a rich man, I'd gladly be his mistress. Lin Fang rolled her eyes. Look at you, so shameless. I mean, you're no spring chicken either. Why don't you seriously find someone, fall in love, get married? Look at me. I've got a kid in elementary school, while you're still a single dog. Xiaomei shrugged. So what if I'm single? One person fed means the whole family's fine. I'm a firm believer in living alone. I'd rather stay single than marry just for the sake of it. Besides, look at your marriage. I'm even more afraid of rushing into one now. When you first married Fang Shua, I was so jealous. But what good did it do? Ended in divorce anyway. Lin Fang sighed. Don't talk about it. It's all in the past. Soon, work hours ended. Everyone in the company tidied up early and left on time. Nobody worked overtime today. Everyone clocked out promptly. It was rare for the boss to treat everyone, so anyone who didn't show up would be a fool. Everyone arrived at Jiangzhou Royal Taste KTV and gathered in the largest private room. Besides singing their hearts out, they could enjoy unlimited free snacks, soft drinks, and alcohol. The team-building event began, and according to tradition, the first song had to be performed for the boss. Since nearly everyone in the company already knew about Guan Yunshui and Lin Fang's relationship, some mischievous colleagues specifically picked a duet and invited them both on stage. Without hesitation, Guan Yunshui and Lin Fang stepped forward and sang together. After finishing the song, they handed the microphone over to others. For a long time, everyone had been under the shadow of potential compensation claims and financial collapse, so they hadn't enjoyed themselves like this in ages. Add in some alcohol, and excitement quickly spread through the group. As time passed, the atmosphere in the room grew increasingly lively. But just then, Lin Fang suddenly realized that Guan Yunshui was nowhere to be seen. Her attention had been focused on her singing co-workers, and with Xiaomei constantly chatting and joking beside her, she hadn't noticed. She didn't even know when Guan Yunshui had left. She turned to Xiaomei and asked, "Where's Guan Yunshui? How come he's gone?" Xiaomei glanced around. "I don't know. Maybe he drank too much and went to the restroom." Lin Fang tugged at Xiaomei. "Come on, let's go check. If he really is drunk, what if something happens to him?" So Xiaomei followed Lin Fang as they quietly slipped out of the room to look for Guan Yunshui in the restrooms. But after searching everywhere, they found no one. Lin Fang pulled out her phone and dialed Guan Yunshui's number. The call connected, but nobody answered. Lin Fang started to worry. He's not picking up. What if he passed out somewhere? Xiaomei tried to calm her. "Don't panic, he'll be fine. Let's split up and search separately." Lin Fang nodded, and the two of them went off in different directions. After a thorough search, they met again at the door of the private room. Lin Fang looked anxious as she said, "Xiaomei, did you find him? I've looked everywhere and can't locate him. What should we do?" Xiaomei's expression was uneasy. She hesitated several times before finally, sighing and shaking her head. "Fang, don't panic. He should be fine." Chapter 100, A Heavy Burden. Just as Lin Fang was pacing anxiously, she suddenly heard Guan Yunshui's voice from behind. "Lin Fang, Xiaomei, what are you two doing out here? Why aren't you going inside to sing?" Hearing the voice, Lin Fang whirled around. There, walking side by side toward her, were Guan Yunshui and a young, pretty woman. When Lin Fang saw them together, her expression instantly changed. This young woman was Guan Yunshui's secretary. Lin Fang had caught them exchanging glances on several occasions, which had made her suspicious about their relationship. Still, Guan Yunshui had repeatedly denied anything improper, and she had never found concrete evidence, so she chalked it up to her own paranoia. Though not as beautiful as Lin Fang, the secretary had youth on her side, something that always made Lin Fang feel slightly uneasy. Her face darkened, and she fixed both of them with a stern gaze. "Why are you together? Where have you been just now?" Guan Yunshui chuckled lightly. "I stepped out to make a phone call, had a client reaching out about some work matters." Lin Fang pointed at the secretary. "Then what about her?" "She's my assistant. I needed to check some documents with her, so I brought her along too," Guan Yunshui replied. Lin Fang looked deeply skeptical. "Really?" Guan Yunshui spread his hands. "Of course. Hey, Xiaomei saw it too. She can confirm." As he spoke, he turned his eyes toward Xiaomei. But within that glance burned a clear warning. Xiaomei flinched inwardly, her eyes flickering with panic before she forced a weak smile. "Yes, I saw it myself. The boss really was on a phone call." Lin Fang frowned. "Then why didn't you say something earlier?" Xiaomei stammered. "I wanted to, but there just wasn't time." With Xiaomei's confirmation, Lin Fang's suspicions melted away. She exhaled in relief and scolded him half-jokingly. "Next time, just let me know when you're stepping out. Not knowing where you were scared me half to death." Guan Yunshui grinned playfully. "Yes, ma'am, Mrs. Boss." Lin Fang blushed and gently punched his arm. "Don't call me that. We're not even legally married yet." Guan Yunshui stepped forward, taking her hand. "It's just a piece of paper. In a couple days, we'll head to the civil affairs office and get it done. I can't wait to officially make you my wife." Lin Fang glanced at Xiaomei, then pulled her hand free. "Stop it. There are other people around." With that, she turned and walked into the private karaoke room. The moment Lin Fang disappeared inside, Guan Yunshui's expression hardened. He turned coldly to Xiaomei. "Whatever you saw or heard just now, you will forget it all. Otherwise, you know the consequences." Xiaomei's shoulders trembled, but she nodded quickly. Suddenly, Guan Yunshui's demeanor shifted back to one of casual flirtation. "Xiaomei, you know, you're quite pretty too. And you're still unmarried. If you don't mind, you could be my mistress." Xiaomei shook her head frantically. No. Thank you for the offer, Mr. Guan, but Fong Fong is my closest friend. I could never betray her or hurt her like that. Without waiting for him to respond, she quickly turned and hurried into the private room. At that moment, the young secretary approached, wrapped her arms around Guan Yunshuai's, and pouted teasingly. You're terrible. You already have me. And still you go chasing after others. Guan Yunshuai lifted her chin with his finger. You wouldn't understand. Successful men usually have many women around them. Back inside the room, Xiaomei dared not sit close to Lin Fong. Instead, she deliberately kept her distance. Unaware of the turmoil, Lin Fong waved her over, gesturing for her to come sit beside her. But Xiaomei only offered a faint smile and shook her head. She feared that if she sat next to Lin Fong, she might blurt out what she'd just witnessed. Earlier, she truly had seen Guan Yunshuai, but he hadn't been on any phone call. Instead, he'd been engaged in a sordid affair with his young secretary. She never imagined that Guan Yunshuai, on the verge of marrying Lin Fong, would do such a thing. And right under Lin Fong's nose, no less, so brazen, so blatant. Didn't he fear being discovered? Or perhaps, he simply didn't care? Xiaomei's heart was in chaos, her thoughts a tangled mess. As Lin Fong's closest friend, she desperately wanted to tell her the truth. Yet if she did, she knew Guan Yunshuai would never let her off easily. She was utterly alone, vulnerable. If Guan Yunshuai wanted to ruin her, it would take him mere moments. So she remained torn. In a daze, the team-building event came to an end. Everyone gradually left the KTV and headed home. Lin Fong walked over and teased her. What was wrong with you earlier? I called you to sit over here, and you didn't even budge. Xiaomei forced another smile. I didn't want to be a third wheel, that's all. Lin Fong grabbed her arm. Come on, ride with us. We'll drop you off on the way. Xiaomei quickly shook her head. No, it's fine. I'll just take a taxi home. And it was too stuffy inside earlier. I'm feeling a bit dizzy, so I want to walk around outside for a while, get some fresh air. Lin Fong asked with concern. Are you sure you're okay? I'm fine, don't worry. You guys go ahead. See you at the office tomorrow. Xiaomei waved at Lin Fong. Seeing that she insisted, Lin Fong could only nod. All right then, see you tomorrow. With that, she left with Guan Yunshuai and got into the car. As Guan Yunshuai's car gradually disappeared from sight, Xiaomei couldn't help but let out a long sigh. What should she do? She didn't know how she would face Lin Fong in the future. This secret would become a heavy burden, crushing her until she could hardly breathe. Finally snapping back to reality, Xiaomei lifted her leg and began walking away from Huangpin KTV. She hadn't taken more than a few steps when unexpectedly, several drunken men surrounded her. Hey there, such a beautiful girl. Rare, really rare, one of them said lewdly, staring at her. Miss, isn't it boring being all alone? How about keeping us company for a bit? Another taunted with a provocative grin. Xiaomei felt frightened. She realized she had run into some hooligans. They always said beauty brings disaster. She was too attractive, naturally drawing attention like bees to nectar. Being targeted by thugs was only to be expected. She couldn't help regretting now. She should have just gone with Lin Fong. Even though facing Lin Fong made her uneasy, it was still far better than enduring harassment from these scums. The men narrowed their eyes, leering up and down at Xiaomei. She wore an open-collar white blouse, tight jeans, and golden high heels, her figure perfectly outlined, curves accentuated. They drooled in desire, growing increasingly excited under the influence of alcohol, nearly unable to restrain themselves from pouncing on this delicate lamb before them. Just then, a childish voice rang out. Mommy. Immediately after, an adorable little girl suddenly rushed over and tightly hugged Xiaomei's leg. Xiaomei froze, looking down in confusion. Huh, Guogua? She was startled. How could Guogua be here? Before she could make sense of it, Fong Shua's voice came from behind. Let's go. We're heading home. Chapter 101, Ode a Favor. Xiaomei raised her head and saw Fong Shua striding toward her. He grabbed her hand and pulled her away without a word. The drunk men, having heard Guogua call Xiaomei mom, and now seeing a man suddenly appear to take her away, assumed it was her husband and child. They didn't dare cause further trouble and turned away in frustration. After watching them leave, Fong Shua let out a breath of relief and released Xiaomei's hand. Are you okay? He asked. Xiaomei nodded. I'm fine. Thank goodness I ran into you. How come you're here? Both Xiaomei and Fong Shua said at the same time. Fong Shua gave a faint smile. Guogua had a parent-teacher meeting, just ended. I wanted to take her out for something to eat before heading home. I passed by here and happened to see those guys bothering you. At first, I didn't recognize you. It was Guogua who spotted you first. Xiaomei looked at Guogua and gently touched her cheek. Little Guogua, thank you. If you hadn't recognized me, I would have been in real danger. Auntie Xiao, why are you still here? Dad says good kids go straight home after school. Why aren't you home yet? Amused by Guogua's innocent question, Xiaomei laughed. Auntie's company had an event, only finished just now. Oh, by the way, your mom also left not long ago. Fong Shua didn't want to talk about Lin Fong right now, so he quickly changed the subject. Are you heading back? If so, let me give you a ride. It's not safe for a woman to go home alone at night. Xiaomei shook her head. No need to trouble you. I can take a taxi. Making you drive me would waste both time and money on the round trip. Besides, it's getting late. Guogua needs sleep. Waste money. Fong Shua blinked, then immediately understood what she meant. He smiled and pointed at the car parked roadside. I have my own car. Xiaomei followed his gaze and instantly spotted the red Audi A4L. She was startled at first, but quickly realized, of course. Since Fong Shua was involved with Long Jia's eldest daughter, wasn't buying him a car nothing for Long Wanqing? Well then, since he had a car, maybe accepting a ride wouldn't be such a bad idea. At this hour, hailing a taxi wouldn't be easy, and walking home alone really wasn't safe. Xiaomei had no desire to repeat what had just happened. All right, thanks for the ride. The three of them got into the car. As a young child, Guogua couldn't sit in the front passenger seat and had to be strapped into a child's safety seat in the back. Xiaomei opened the front passenger door and sat down. Once inside, Xiaomei looked around curiously, touching things here and there like Granny Lu entering the Grandview Garden. She rarely rode in private cars. The few times she'd hitched a ride from Guan Yunshui were in his company vehicle, and as her boss's car, she always stayed reserved and cautious. But Feng Shuo was different. Though he was Lin Feng's ex-husband, they weren't close, but neither were they strangers. And compared to Guan Yunshui, she had no professional stakes with Feng Shuo, so she felt more relaxed. As she looked around, she couldn't help but sigh. This car must have cost quite a bit, huh? I wonder when I'll ever afford one myself. Feng Shuo smiled lightly. It's only over 300,000, not expensive at all. If you want one, it's not impossible. Xiaomei sighed. I don't have your luck, finding a rich second-generation girlfriend. I'd love to marry someone wealthy too, but I guess I just wasn't born with that fate. Feng Shuo frowned. Wait a second, who told you I have a rich girlfriend? Lin Feng did. She said you're dating the heiress of Longhai Group, and you're practically engaged. Miss Long even called Lin Feng personally, and said she'd become Guogua's mother. She also demanded that Lin Feng give up custody rights before agreeing to invest in our company. Looks like she really loves you. Otherwise, why would she do all this for you? Feng Shuo's expression darkened. Until now, he'd been puzzled about why Lin Feng suddenly dropped her claim for custody. So it was Long Wanqing who'd gone behind his back to meet Lin Feng. He said coldly, there's something I must clarify. I have only a normal working relationship with Long Wanqing. We aren't dating. She is not my girlfriend. This car was bought with my own money. Nothing to do with her. Not even a single cent came from her. As for what you mentioned, that Long Wanqing contacted Lin Feng. I knew nothing about it. When you see her, tell Lin Feng if she wants custody of Guogua, she should fight me in court openly and honestly. With that, Feng Shuo pressed the accelerator and started the engine. Following the address Xiaomei provided, he dropped her off at her home before returning to his own. He first sent Guogua to bed, then picked up the phone and dialed Long Wanqing's number directly. Truth be told, Feng Shuo was furious. He just wanted to ask Long Wanqing, who gave her the right to interfere in his personal affairs, and worse, keep it secret from him. Yet, after hearing the dial tone, he suddenly changed his mind. Although Long Wanqing shouldn't have interfered in his personal life, she had good intentions after all. Besides, what she'd done had spared him many unnecessary troubles. He never wanted Guogua to see her parents fighting in court. And with his work schedule about to get extremely busy, having to deal with a custody battle on the side would have been exhausting. Moreover, Long Wanqing had already kept her promise by not revealing the truth to Lin Feng. The reason she claimed she wanted to become Guogua's mother was probably just a temporary measure. She wasn't even married yet. How much sacrifice did it take for her to say something like that for his sake? If he didn't show proper gratitude and instead confronted her angrily, that would be too heartless. Soon, the call connected. Long Wanqing's voice came from the other end. I know why you're calling me, and I knew I couldn't hide it from you. If you want to yell at me, go ahead. I'll just... Before she could finish, Feng Shuo interrupted. Thank you. Long Wanqing was stunned. To be honest, I was really angry at first because I thought you were being overly meddlesome. But you did help me. That's undeniable. If you hadn't spoken to Lin Feng, I'd probably be facing a lot of buffet down the road. So, thank you, Feng Shuo said sincerely. His response left Long Wanqing momentarily flustered. She stood there in silence for a moment, finally regaining her composure, stammering. Oh, then I'm glad you understand. I only did it casually, that's all. Either way, I owe you one this time. But next time, if you want to step into my affairs, please talk to me first, Feng Shuo added. For some reason, Long Wanqing felt a quiet thrill inside. Feng Shuo was someone who never easily admitted owing anyone a favor. Yet here he was, not only not blaming her, but actually acknowledging that he owed her one. What an unexpected reward. A sweet warmth spread through her chest, and without thinking, a smile tugged at her lips. It was a kind of smile she usually reserved only for moments with Guogua. Well then, you said it yourself. Next time I need you to pretend to be my boyfriend, don't you dare refuse. Chapter 102. No Rules. The next morning, at Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company, a black Audi sped toward the building and screeched to a halt in front of the entrance. The car door opened, and a middle-aged man stepped out. This man was none other than Lin Guoxiong, Lin Feng's father. He worked at a state-owned enterprise, serving as director of the supply and marketing department. The company he worked for was the largest packaging manufacturer in Jiangzhou, supplying products across industries. The Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company was one of Lin Guoxiong's biggest clients. In the past, Lin Guoxiong never had to leave his office. Every day consisted of sipping tea, reading the newspaper, and dozing until quitting time. At the end of each month, he'd collect several 10,000 yuan, living an easy, carefree life. But things were different now. The packaging factory had undergone reform, transitioning into a joint stock limited company. Their old model of guaranteed production and sales had been scrapped. More and more companies in Jiangzhou were entering the packaging business. Although his company still maintained a leading position, there was no guarantee they wouldn't be overtaken by new competitors. The recent collapse of the Jiangzhou food processing plant was like yesterday's news, a harsh lesson that remained vivid in everyone's memory. As a result, the management demanded a complete shift in mindset to drive innovation. As director of supply and marketing, Lin Guoxiong held a crucial position. After careful calculation, he was shocked to discover that procurement volume from Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company had plummeted dramatically. At this rate, they risked losing this major client entirely. These days were different. clients were vital to ensure continued operations. So Lin Guoxiong had no choice but to leave his office and come personally to negotiate future cooperation. He glanced up at the entrance, straightened his clothes, gathered his composure, and strode forward with determination. Coincidentally, Fang Shuo also arrived at the company at that very moment. They unexpectedly met right at the entrance. This was actually the first time Fang Shuo had seen Lin Guoxiong since divorcing Lin Fang. He paused for a second, then greeted politely. Dad. Lin Guoxiong snorted coldly. Mr. Fang, don't call me that. Lin Fang has nothing to do with you anymore. I'm no longer your father-in-law. Fang Shuo addressed him as dad, mainly out of respect for the fact that he was still Guoguo's biological grandfather. It was only proper, both emotionally and morally. But since Lin Guoxiong rejected the gesture, Fang Shuo saw no need to grovel. He nodded and said calmly, Mr. Lin. Lin Guoxiong huffed again, ignored him, and kept walking inside. Fang Shuo followed closely behind into the agricultural products company. Lin Guoxiong suddenly stopped, turned around, and spoke icily. Why are you following me? Let me make this clear, Lin Fang will never go back to you. Don't waste your time dreaming about it. She's with Guan Yunshui now, and her future will be much better. She won't have to suffer poverty and hardship with you ever again. Since you're so unmotivated yourself, stop dragging my daughter down. Oh, by the way, those illegal businesses you run, I suggest you shut them down while you can. You can't walk along the riverbank forever without getting your feet wet. If your schemes are exposed one day, prison is all you'll get. I may have once been your father-in-law, so I'm warning you kindly. Whether you listen or not is up to you. I've said my piece. Fang Shuo couldn't help but laugh. Was this really a warning? Clearly, Lin Guoxiong was just playing the role of a moral superior, lecturing him like some arrogant elder. Every member of the Lin family was ungrateful. Fang Shuo had no affection for them whatsoever. In the past, he'd restrained himself out of consideration for Lin Fang, but now that relationship was over. There was no reason to remain courteous. Fang Shuo replied calmly, don't flatter yourself. I work here, so I'm not following you. And whether I'm ambitious or not has nothing to do with you. You have no right to lecture me. And finally, let me warn you. Food can be eaten recklessly, but words shouldn't be spoken carelessly. You claim I run illegal businesses. Where's your proof? Without evidence, that's slander. I can sue you for defamation. Hearing this, Lin Guoxiong became so angry his mustache nearly trembled. He pointed at Fang Shuo and shouted, You absolutely have no manners. Fang Shuo sneered coldly. Manners? With someone who understands rules, I'll gladly follow them. But discussing rules with someone who has no concept of them is like playing music for a cow. Fang Shuo had always been sharp-tongued. His rebuttal left Lin Guoxiong speechless, utterly unable to counter. All he could do was stand there, his face burning red with fury. After stammering for several seconds, he finally managed to spit out. You little punk, don't get too cocky. You work here, right? Fine. I know your general manager Ding. I'll tell him to fire you. Fang Shuo laughed loudly. Manager Ding? He doesn't have the authority to fire me. Lin Guoxiong trembled with rage, nodding repeatedly. Fine, very well. Manager Ding can't fire you. Is that it? We'll just wait and see. With those words, he snorted furiously and turned away. A sense of satisfaction welled up in Fang Shuo's heart. He had been looking forward to this moment for a long time, and now, it had finally come. How could someone like Lin Guoxiong ever be his match? Dreaming about getting Ding Yi to fire him? He held shares in the agricultural products company. Ding Yi had no right to dismiss him at all. Moreover, the agricultural products company now completely depended on Fang Shuo. Ding Yi fully understood this fact. Even if Fang Shuo didn't hold any shares, he wouldn't dare utter a word about firing him. Furious, Lin Guoxiong stormed into Ding Yi's office. They had met before and were somewhat acquainted. Seeing Lin Guoxiong's grim expression, Ding Yi smiled lightly. Director Lin, what brings you here today? Who upset you? Why are you so tense? Lin Guoxiong didn't dare show arrogance toward Ding Yi. He quickly suppressed his emotions and immediately put on a friendly smile. Oh, nothing serious. I just ran into someone earlier who really made me angry. Let's set that aside. The reason I'm here today is specifically to discuss our cooperation. As he spoke, Lin Guoxiong pulled out a notebook from his bag, flipped it open, glanced at the data, then continued. According to statistics, your company's recent purchases of packaging materials from our factory have dropped sharply. Ding Yi chuckled. Now that you mention it, I do recall. Our company has undergone restructuring, so we've implemented a new business strategy. Our packaging procurement now depends entirely on client requirements. Although your factory has long cooperated with us, you don't meet our current standards. So we've had to source packaging from other manufacturers who comply with our specifications. Hearing this, Lin Guoxiong grew anxious. But the requirements you've set are simply too high. We can't possibly meet them. Director Ding, could you lower the standards just a bit? If you do, I guarantee we can deliver. Ding Yi shook his head. That's impossible. Chapter 103, Quality Issues. Right now, although I still hold the title of general manager in our company, it's not like I can make decisions on my own. We operate under a shareholding system. Any decision requires a shareholders meeting and a voting process. The procurement standard for packaging was decided by vote. So even if I wanted to help you, I can't go against the outcome of that vote, Ding Yi said with evident helplessness. Lin Guoxiong anxiously replied, Director Ding, we've cooperated for such a long time. Even if nothing else, for the sake of our past relationship, you should give us a little more support. He suddenly looked around cautiously, then lowered his voice and whispered, If your procurement volume returns to what it used to be, I guarantee I'll set aside part of the profits as a personal reward for you. Upon hearing this, Ding Yi's expression darkened instantly. He spoke sternly. Old Lin, I can pretend I didn't hear that last sentence. Remember, times have changed. The tricks you used in the past won't work anymore. Lin Guoxiong had never expected that even after pulling out his final trump card, Ding Yi would still refuse him. With no choice left, he gave up. But he couldn't bear to return empty-handed. Losing Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company, a client of such size, would inevitably cause a significant drop in their packaging factory's market share. They'd cease to be the largest packaging factory in Jiangzhou and would soon be overtaken by competitors. Without market share, the fate of Jiangzhou food processing plant awaited them, their inevitable future. After leaving Ding Yi's office, Lin Guoxiong immediately turned and walked into Fei Ping's office. Ding Yi had refused him, but Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company wasn't run by one person alone. Fei Ping was known for being especially opportunistic and self-serving. Approaching him seemed like the right move. Half an hour later, Lin Guoxiong walked out of Fei Ping's office satisfied. Clearly, he had achieved his goal. Fei Ping had agreed to his request. Grateful for the promised benefits from Lin Guoxiong, Fei Ping enthusiastically escorted him all the way to the entrance of the Agricultural Products Company. Just as they were saying goodbye, Lin Guoxiong suddenly remembered his earlier encounter with Fang Shua. He turned to Fei Ping and said, Manager Fei, earlier today there was an employee here at your company who disrespected me openly and showed no proper manners. I hope you'll handle this matter seriously. Hearing this, Fei Ping immediately thumped his chest and declared, just tell me his name. No questions asked. I'll fire him on the spot. Without hesitation, Lin Guoxiong said, his name is Fang Shua. Just get rid of him. With that, he left the Agricultural Products Company. Fei Ping stood there stunned, muttering the name several times before frowning in confusion. Fang Shua? Could it be we have another employee named Fang Shua? He returned to his office and requested the personnel department's employee roster. After searching for over an hour, he found no second employee named Fang Shua. Maybe old Lin got the name wrong. Fei Ping decided he'd double-check with Lin Guoxiong the next time they met. 2 days later, Fang Shua received a call from Zhuang Tao, sales manager at Weimei Company. Zhuang reported that the goods delivered by the Agricultural Products Company over the past 2 days had serious packaging issues. These packaging flaws not only affected the quality of the agricultural products, but also posed storage problems. Since such issues had never occurred before, Zhuang called specifically to inquire. After listening, Fang Shua frowned deeply. The original supplier for the Agricultural Products Company had been Jiangzhou Packaging Company, Limited, whose packaging products contained numerous defects and failed to meet customer standards. After thorough evaluation and review, Fang Shua had carefully selected their current packaging supplier. Logically, this new supplier shouldn't be producing such defective packaging, so why was Weimei reporting these problems? Without delay, Fang Shua decided to visit in person and investigate where exactly the problem lay. Arriving at Weimei's warehouse, Zhuang Tao led Fang Shua to the batch of goods with problematic packaging. One look was enough for Fang Shua to understand. The packaging had been switched back, replaced once again with products from the former supplier, Jiangzhou Packaging Company, Limited. No wonder these issues had reappeared. Having identified the cause, Fang Shua turned to Zhuang Tao with deep regret. Manager Zhuang, this is entirely our fault. We will retrieve this entire shipment and replace it with a new batch immediately. I will provide you with a formal written explanation regarding this incident and take full responsibility. Please give us the opportunity to correct this mistake. Zhuang Tao hadn't expected Fang Shua to respond with such sincerity. Given that the incident hadn't caused significant losses, he smiled and said, Mr. Fang, it's not that bad. Just take the defective goods back with you. That'll be fine. Besides, I think there's no need for a written statement. Just pay attention next time, Zhuang Tao said. But Fang Shua shook his head. No, this incident was caused by our failure to properly enforce quality control. We were lucky this time. No major losses occurred. But what if we weren't so lucky next time? Then both our companies would suffer. As business operators, once we identify a problem, we must handle it seriously, not just sweep it under the rug. I will make sure there is accountability for this matter. Please wait for our company's official follow-up actions. Fang Shua's words deeply impressed Zhuang Tao. Although China was undergoing reform everywhere, while systems were changing, the mindset of many managers remained the same. Having studied abroad, Zhuang Tao had spent years overseas and was acutely aware of the gap between China and more advanced nations. He longed to close this gap, but without a shift in people's mentality, progress would be difficult. Fang Shua was the first person he'd encountered in China who truly embodied this kind of rigorous, responsible attitude. In that sense, he was quite similar to Richard. No wonder Richard admired him so much. After returning to the company, Fang Shua immediately convened a shareholders' meeting. Changing packaging suppliers was a small matter, but someone had violated company rules and damaged its reputation. That was serious. He gathered everyone together, even calling Long Wanqing to attend the meeting. Once all had arrived, he spoke slowly. Today, I went to Weimei Company. Manager Zhuang Tao told me our packaging has developed serious problems affecting product quality and their storage capabilities. I discovered that the packaging for this entire batch has been switched back to products from Jiangzhou Packaging Company, Limited, the very supplier we voted against and replaced with another packaging company. I want to know, who took the initiative to switch the packaging without authorization? As Fang Shua spoke, his eyes settled directly on Ding Yi. Ding Yi had never seen Fang Shua so stern. His gaze was piercing, almost frightening. Ding Yi shivered involuntarily and quickly shook his head. It wasn't me. The sales manager from Jiangzhou Packaging did come see me, but I didn't agree to anything. Chapter 104, Backtrack completely. Fang Shua's gaze fell once again on Fei Ping's face. Fei Ping knew he couldn't hide the truth, so he admitted, yes, it was my decision to change it. It's just packaging, nothing big. The Jiangzhou Packaging Company Limited's products are cheaper than similar ones. We can save a lot on costs. Fang Shuo snapped sharply, shut up. Fei Ping flinched in fright and immediately sealed his lips, afraid to say another word. Packaging is the face of the product and the image of our company. By casually changing the packaging, you're slapping your own face. Besides, shareholders voted on this matter. Who gave you the authority to unilaterally overturn that decision? What right do you have? Do you even realize that Wei Mei is a foreign-funded enterprise? Foreign investors care most about details. If we lose such a client because of negligence over minor details, it would be a tremendous loss for us. Our company is in an upward phase. You're destroying your own future with actions like these. There are so many employees depending on this company. Do you really want them to suffer alongside you? Fang Shuo scolded Fei Ping fiercely, showing no mercy. Fei Ping's face turned pale, then flushed red with embarrassment. He felt utterly humiliated. Finally unable to contain himself, he slammed the table and shouted, Fang Shuo, who the hell do you think you are? Why do you have to lecture me like this? Don't think just because you hold more shares than I do, you can shout at me like this. And don't forget, Director Ding is still here. Are you even respecting him by acting this way? Fang Shuo replied coldly. In terms of shareholding ratio, Director Ding and I are equal. So during shareholder meetings, we stand as equals. But since your ownership stake is less than mine, I absolutely have the authority to reprimand you. Furthermore, you've unilaterally altered a resolution made by the general shareholders meeting by switching packaging suppliers. Your actions have seriously violated company regulations. Therefore, I propose revoking your right to attend future shareholder meetings. Additionally, I intend to report this matter to the Public Security Bureau. I suspect someone may have taken bribes behind closed doors, which involves legal violations. Once the police investigate, everything will come to light. After Fang Shuo finished speaking, Fei Ping panicked instantly. Being banned from attending shareholder meetings was one thing, but if Fang Shuo actually reported the case to the authorities, disaster would follow. A simple investigation would doom him completely. Frantic, he quickly turned pleading eyes toward Ding Yi. Ding Yi cleared his throat and said, Xiao Fang, calm down, don't get so angry. This isn't really such a serious issue, so there's no need to involve the police. However, Fei Ping did violate company rules. That fact is undeniable. Therefore, I agree to expel him from the shareholder meetings. He must not participate anymore. After Ding Yi spoke, several other senior managers nodded in agreement. Clearly, Ding Yi was covering for Fei Ping. He intended only to use a delaying tactic to temporarily pacify Fang Shuo and prevent him from reporting the incident. Once things had quieted down, he'd find a chance later to reinstate Fei Ping into the shareholder meetings. Through such maneuvering, the entire affair could quietly fade away. Fang Shuo couldn't help but sneer inwardly. Ding Yi's strategy was exactly the old playbook. No matter what happened, always resort to procrastination first. Wait until time passes and everyone cools off, and eventually nothing comes of it. Just as Fang Shuo was about to speak again, Hu Yuren tugged lightly at his sleeve and shook his head. Qianlai also looked at him imploringly, silently urging Fang Shuo not to act impulsively. Fang Shuo understood perfectly. Both Hu Yuren and Qianlai hoped to avoid any open conflict between himself and Ding Yi's faction. The company was thriving now, and any internal division among top management could easily cause their hard-earned progress to collapse overnight. Although Fang Shuo wasn't afraid of confronting Ding Yi directly, considering the respect he owed to Hu Yuren and Qianlai, he changed his tone and said instead, since everyone agrees, let's settle it this way then. Throughout all of this, Long Wanqing remained silent, not offering her opinion, neither agreeing nor objecting. After the shareholder meeting ended, everyone dispersed. Ding Yi specially called Fei Ping into his office. After closing the door, he roared furiously, "You fool! Did you really think you could take money from anyone without consequence? Don't you know that Lin Guoxiong first approached me? Only after I refused did he turn to you. Couldn't you use your brain? If I had agreed, do you think he'd have come to you? Now look what you've done. Now Fang Shuo and the others have caught you red-handed. They kicked you out of the shareholder meeting. From now on, whatever decisions they make, I'll have no choice but to obediently nod along." Fei Ping grimaced miserably. How was I supposed to know Fang Shuo would blow things up like this? It's just some packaging, who cares? So we switch suppliers. What's the big deal? Ding Yi roared angrily. Shut up. Do you still think this is the past? Everything now must follow the rules and regulations. And decisions made by voting cannot be changed under any circumstances. You've crossed their Dishan. Why should they tolerate it quietly? Besides, what kind of company is Wei Mei? Do you think they can put up with even a grain of sand in their eyes? You fool, utterly stupid. Scolded fiercely by Ding Yi, Fei Ping deflated like a punctured balloon. Director Ding, then tell me, what should I do now? Ding Yi snorted heavily. You're asking me what to do? Do I need to teach you this? Right now, immediately, return every single penny you received to Lin Guoxiong. That money is a time bomb. It could destroy you at any moment. Fei Ping looked reluctant, but he could only nod. Fine, I'll return it right away. And under no circumstances are you to admit that you took his money. If anyone asks in the future, deny everything. Flat out refuse to acknowledge it. Ding Yi instructed. Fei Ping nodded. Got it. I'll return it immediately. He quickly returned to his office, opened the safe, took out the 100,000 yuan Lin Guoxiong had given him, and stuffed it all into a manila envelope. Then he drove to Jiangzhou Packaging Company, Limited, found Lin Guoxiong, and threw the envelope onto his desk. Not a single cent has been spent. Take it all back. Remember, I've never known you, and you've never approached me. That's it, goodbye? No, better yet, never see each other again. After saying this, Fei Ping turned to leave. Lin Guoxiong quickly blocked his way. Manager Fei, what exactly do you mean by this? You know perfectly well what I mean. This money is too hot to hold. I don't dare keep it. Fei Ping sneered coldly. Lin Guoxiong was momentarily stunned, but then quickly realized what was going on. He smiled slightly and said, Manager Fei, you've misunderstood. This money is my payment to you for helping me get rid of Feng Shuo. Fei Ping snapped back. What kind of reward requires so much money? And anyway, there is someone named Feng Shuo in our company, but he's one of our major shareholders. You wanted me to fire him? I'd be lucky if he didn't fire me instead. Lin Guoxiong froze. What? A major shareholder? You must be mistaken. He's nothing but a piece of trash. How could he possibly be a shareholder? Chapter 105. This is impossible. Fei Ping didn't want to say any more. He waved his hand and said, I don't know if the Feng Shuo you're talking about is the same person I know. In any case, if there's nothing else, I'll be leaving now. With that, he hurried away without even turning back. Lin Guoxiong sat motionless in his chair, utterly baffled. Hadn't everything been settled just earlier? How could Fei Ping suddenly change his mind like this? Throughout the entire agricultural products company, Fei Ping was the only one willing to take Lin Guoxiong's money. If even he couldn't be controlled, then things would truly become dire. Losing such a major client would likely doom the company to swift elimination from the market. As director of the supply and marketing department, Lin Guoxiong would naturally bear undeniable responsibility. Unwilling to sit idly by and await disaster, he decided to visit the agricultural products company one more time to see if anyone else might be able to help. He quickly got into his car and headed to the destination. Whether by cruel fate or mere coincidence, as soon as Lin Guoxiong stepped into the company, he ran into Feng Shuo again. Walking with Feng Shuo were Hu Yurin, Qian Lai, and even Fei Ping himself. Lin Guoxiong immediately rushed forward, pointing at Feng Shuo and shouting at Fei Ping. Manager Fei, it's him. This man is Feng Shuo. Fire him immediately, and I promise you won't suffer for it. Everyone froze in shock at these words. Especially Fei Ping. He stood gaping, wishing he could sink into a hole. This Lin Guoxiong really had no sense at all, coming back to the company and pointing fingers and screaming like this. He already felt terribly uneasy around Feng Shuo because he'd accepted bribes from Lin Guoxiong. That was an indisputable fact. If Feng Shuo decided to handle this strictly by the book, Fei Ping could end up in prison. His face turned pale. He rushed forward and shoved Lin Guoxiong hard, his expression furious. Are you out of your mind? I already told you. This man is a major shareholder of our company, holding even more shares than I do. He's on equal footing with Director Ding. What? Lin Guoxiong froze. He stared at Feng Shuo in utter disbelief, as though struck by lightning. Impossible. This can't be. Feng Shuo was just a washed-up nobody. Ever since losing his job, he'd been like a turtle hiding in its shell, spending his days either drinking or sleeping, long stripped of ambition, reduced to a useless wreck. How could he possibly be a shareholder in an agricultural products company? This has to be a joke. At that moment, Feng Shuo spoke calmly. Manager Fei, do you two know each other? Fei Ping was terrified. He shook his head frantically. No, not at all. We've only met a few times. I have absolutely no connection with him. Feng Shuo clearly didn't believe Fei Ping's lies, but he didn't press the issue. He simply smiled faintly and said, handle this as you see fit, but remember the company rules and the dishan of being human. After speaking, Feng Shuo turned and walked away with Hu Yurin and Qian Lai. Only then did Fei Ping let out a long sigh of relief. Clearly, Feng Shuo had chosen to let him off easy. Had he pursued this seriously, Fei Ping might not have escaped unscathed. He immediately turned stern and snapped at Lin Guoxiong. What the hell are you doing here? Didn't I return your money already? Why are you still showing up? I'm warning you, get out right now, or I won't be polite. It took Lin Guoxiong a while to recover from his shock. He asked cautiously, Manager Fei, is Feng Shuo really a shareholder here? But how? How is that even possible? Why not? During our company's restructuring, he seized the opportunity to buy up large amounts of stock. He even bought some shares directly from me. Now that I think about it, he was truly the one with foresight. Enough. I shouldn't even be telling you this. Are you leaving or not? If you don't, I'm calling security. Fei Ping glared. Lin Guoxiong had no choice but to leave in bitter disappointment. In truth, with the evidence Feng Shuo now possessed, he could easily have sent Lin Guoxiong to prison. Bribery was a crime. Once convicted, Lin Guoxiong would at least serve 3 to 5 years. The sentence wasn't long, but it would effectively ruin Lin Guoxiong's entire life. The Lin family currently relied entirely on Lin Guoxiong. Once he fell, the whole family would collapse with him. Yet Feng Shuo chose not to do it. There were 2 reasons why he didn't call the police or move to have Lin Guoxiong arrested. First, despite Lin Guoxiong's terrible character, he was still Guoguo's maternal grandfather. Because of that bloodline, Feng Shuo couldn't bring himself to deliver a fatal blow. He and Lin Feng had once been husband and wife. Even though they had parted ways, there was no need to destroy her entire family. Second, based on memories from his past life, Lin Guoxiong's eventual fate was already grim enough. There was no need for Feng Shuo to intervene. Lin Guoxiong would naturally meet his downfall all on his own. Since Lin Guoxiong's fate was already sealed, Feng Shuo saw no reason to play the villain. He acted as if nothing had happened. After returning to the office, he immediately wrote a formal written statement and sent it to Zhuang Tao. At the same time, he informed the other party about the disciplinary action taken against Fei Ping and promised that nothing similar would happen again in the future. Wei Mei was very satisfied with Feng Shua's attitude and the way he handled the situation. After receiving Feng Shua's written report, Richard called him right away to express his approval. No one is perfect. Mistakes are inevitable. Even someone as meticulous as Richard occasionally made 1 or 2 errors. But what truly mattered was how one responded and managed the situation after something went wrong. When Richard first arrived in Jiangzhou, he had interacted with people from many local enterprises. Their attitudes toward mistakes were often perfunctory, either making excuses or brushing things under the rug, and this had left Richard deeply dissatisfied. But Feng Shua's approach greatly pleased him. This incident hadn't caused significant losses. Yet, as Feng Shua himself said, the lack of serious consequences was merely due to good luck. As the saying goes, a small leak can sink a great ship. Problems must be corrected promptly. Otherwise, one might not always be so fortunate in the future. Thanks to Feng Shua's proactive handling, the matter was now effectively settled. And next, to Feng Shua's delight, Yi Anqi had resigned from Mingrue and officially reported to the Agricultural Products Company. His capable assistant had finally returned to his side. It was indeed a cause for celebration. That evening, Feng Shua specially invited Yi Anqi out for dinner to welcome her arrival. He also invited Hu Yurin and Qian Lai, since they would all be working together moving forward and should get acquainted. Because Feng Shua was concerned about Guagua, he picked her up from school and brought her along to the restaurant he'd reserved earlier. When they arrived at the private room, Hu Yurin and Qian Lai were already chatting happily with Yi Anqi. Yi Anqi was an intelligent girl, naturally good at communication. Hu Yurin and Qian Lai were both outgoing and easygoing, quick to make friends. Although it was their first meeting, the three of them were chatting like old friends, with no sense of awkwardness at all. Brother Feng, little Guagua, you're here. Hu Yurin greeted them with a smile as soon as he saw Feng Shua. You all seem to be having a great conversation, Feng Shua said, sitting down with Guagua. Chapter 106, Dead Drunk. Guagua wasn't unfamiliar with any of them. She had met all of them before. She was already old friends with Hu Yurin and Qian Lai, and Feng Shua had brought Guagua along during several meals they'd shared. As for Yi Anqi, she was practically family. Polite as ever, Guagua bowed slightly to Hu Yurin and Qian Lai. Hello, Uncle Hu, hello, Uncle Qian. Hu Yurin nodded approvingly. Guagua is such a well-behaved, thoughtful girl. Compared to my little troublemaker at home, she's light years ahead. Qian Lai chimed in fervently. Absolutely. It's understandable if a boy is mischievous, who has a son after all. But my daughter? She's as wild as a monkey. If she could be even half as sweet-tempered as Guagua, I'd consider myself blessed. Both Hu Yurin and Qian Lai were late parents, so they doted on their children immensely. Still, it was normal enough for kids to be a bit rambunctious. Feng Shua called over the waiter, placed the order, and then began introducing everyone. You've probably already met, but just to make it official, this is Yi Anqi, one of my former team members from Mingrue. She's bright, hardworking, and full of drive. If you need anything done, just tell her, and she'll handle it. These two gentlemen are my close friends and business partners, Hu Yurin and Qian Lai. They're genuinely good men, as I'm sure you've already sensed during your conversation. Yi Anqi nodded eagerly. Yes, absolutely, boss. Everything you said is spot on. Brother Hu and Brother Qian are so generous and down to earth. No airs about them at all. Qian Lai laughed heartily. Haha, Feng brother, we really hit it off right away. Little sister Yi fits in perfectly with us. Her personality and temper just match ours. Brother Hu, Brother Qian, I'm still very green, so I'll be counting on both of you to look out for me. Yi Anqi said sincerely. Seeing how smoothly they got along, even adopting sibling-like terms, it seemed certain that they would integrate well professionally from now on. Since today was all about Yi Anqi, and because she was thrilled at the prospect of working alongside Feng Shua again, she naturally let herself go a bit at dinner. Back when she worked sales with Feng Shua, she had proven her drinking prowess time and again. But even the strongest drinkers eventually meet their limit. By the time the meal ended, Yi Anqi was swaying uncontrollably, completely passed out. Seeing her in such a state, Hu Yurin looked concerned. Is she going to be alright? Feng Shua shook his head. She'll be fine. Normally she can hold her liquor, but today she must have gotten too excited, drank a bit too much. Qian Lai mused. Looks like she can't possibly go home by herself. Feng brother, why don't you take her back? Feng Shua hesitated. But I don't even know where she lives. Hu Yurin frowned. Then what do? We can't exactly wait here until she sobers up. At this rate, she might not wake up till dawn. Guagua tugged gently at Feng Shua's sleeve. Dad, why don't we take her home with us for now? Let Sister Anqi sleep in my room. Feng Shua thought it over, then nodded. Alright, we'll take her back. But I'll give her my room. I'll sleep on the couch. You still have school tomorrow. I won't let this interfere with you. So, with help from Hu Yurin and Qian Lai, they carried Yi Anqi to the car. After exchanging goodbyes, they each headed home. Halfway through the drive, the bumpy road jostled her. Combined with the severity of her intoxication, Yi Anqi suddenly winced in discomfort. She flung open the window and vomited violently outside. Feng Shua could only pull over helplessly, waiting beside the roadside until she finished. He patted her back gently while shaking his head. You never change. Get happy, lose control, always leaving me to clean up after you. Finally, after she'd emptied her stomach, he softly tapped her cheek. Hey, wake up. Wake up, Anqi. Tell me where you live. Let me get you home. Her eyes fluttered open. She gazed at Feng Shua and broke into a sleepy smile. Boss, today was so great. We're going to work together again, just like old times. As she spoke, she reached up and touched his face. Boss, you're so handsome. Feng Shua frowned and gently pushed her hand away. Anqi, seriously, where do you live? Just give me your address. But she only smiled again, closed her eyes, and slipped back into unconsciousness. Feng Shuo sighed, giving up on extracting information from her, and climbed back into the driver's seat. Suddenly remembering something, he turned around to Guogua in the back seat. Guogua, promise me. You must never drink this much, understand? It's dangerous for girls to get drunk out there. Guogua nodded vaguely, not entirely understanding. Will the police take me away? Feng Shuo couldn't help but chuckle, though he nodded firmly. Yes, they will. After speaking, he started the engine and drove toward home. As they arrived at the entrance of the residential compound, by pure coincidence, a bright red Audi TT drove past from the side. The moment Guogua saw the car, she immediately exclaimed, "Ah, it's Sister Long." Hardly had the words left her mouth when the window of the Audi TT automatically lowered, revealing Long Wanqing's stunning face. "Why are you coming back so late?" And Guogua too. Long Wanqing frowned. Feng Shuo was about to explain when, unexpectedly, Yanqi, sitting in the front passenger seat, leaned halfway out and smiled at Long Wanqing, saying, "Hi, Miss Long. Hello, I'm Yanqi. We've met before. Miss Long, you're so beautiful. If only I could be as pretty as you." Seeing Yanqi, Long Wanqing's expression subtly shifted. Her gaze grew gradually colder as she replied indifferently, "You're beautiful too." With that, she rolled up the window, stepped on the accelerator, and drove straight into the compound. "Dad, does sister seem angry?" Guogua asked. Feng Shuo also sensed that Long Wanqing appeared furious, yet he hadn't offended her. He hadn't even spoken to her. She had no reason to be angry. He couldn't help but glance at Yanqi. Could it be that this little girl had once upset Long Wanqing? Suddenly, it dawned on Feng Shuo. Back at the amusement park, Yanqi had mistaken Long Wanqing for Lin Feng and called her sister-in-law. That must be why Long Wanqing held a grudge against her. "It's all right. Your sister probably just misunderstood. She isn't petty. Once we explain, everything will be fine," Feng Shuo reassured. After parking the car, he carried Yanqi home and laid her down on his bed. He briefly considered helping her take off her coat, but mindful of propriety between men and women, Feng Shuo merely removed her shoes, covered her with a blanket, then quietly left the room. The next morning, Feng Shuo was still fast asleep when suddenly a piercing scream jolted him awake. He leapt up instantly and rushed into the room. "What happened? What's wrong?" Yanqi stared around in terror, wide-eyed, until her gaze landed on Feng Shuo's face. "Boss, what am I doing here?" Chapter 107, Sneaky Behavior. After a brief explanation, Yanqi finally understood. She gave an apologetic smile. "Sorry, boss, for troubling you to bring me back. I've caused you so much inconvenience," Feng Shuo said indifferently. "Just be more careful next time." He glanced at the time. It was only 5:30. Usually, he wouldn't wake until after 6, go for a run, then return to make breakfast for Guogua. It was still very early now. Outside, the sky hadn't even begun to lighten. But since he was already awake, he knew he wouldn't be able to fall back asleep. So he went to wash his face first, then decided to head out for his run directly. Outside, the sky was just beginning to glow faintly, and the streetlights were still on. As he stepped out, he noticed a shadowy figure nearby, sneaking around suspiciously. At this hour, most people would still be asleep. Seeing someone acting so strangely, Feng Shuo suspected he might have encountered a thief. Silently, he crept closer to the figure, then suddenly lunged forward, twisting the person's arm behind their back. "Ouch, ouch, ouch. That hurts." The person cried out in pain. Hearing the voice, Feng Shuo froze for a moment, because it was a woman's voice, and it sounded exactly like Long Wanqing's. He immediately let go, then carefully examined the person under the dim light of the street lamp. Sure enough, it was Long Wanqing. "What are you doing here?" Feng Shuo asked in surprise. Rubbing her sore arm, Long Wanqing snapped irritably. "What's wrong with you? You're so rough. I'm a woman, you know. Why use so much force?" Feng Shuo shrugged. "I thought you were a burglar. Who else would be sneaking around here at this hour?" Long Wanqing pouted. "I live here. Can't I just come out for a walk? Besides, I, Long Wanqing, always act openly and honestly. Unlike certain people who pretend to be upright, but are secretly full of immoral desires." Feng Shuo frowned. "Who are you talking about? Say it clearly." Long Wanqing huffed. "Don't play dumb. I thought you were a decent man, but I never expected you'd bring a woman home late at night and spend the night together, right in front of a child." Feng Shuo couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Your imagination is running wild. Xiaoyi got drunk last night. I wanted to send her home, but I didn't know where she lived, so I had to bring her back with me. Guogua originally wanted her to sleep in her room, but I was worried it might affect her school the next day, so I gave her my room and slept on the sofa myself. Xiaoyi is only in her 20s, 10 years younger than me. Even if I wanted to find a woman, would I go for someone that young?" Feng Shuo was referring to age, but Long Wanqing misunderstood him completely. She glanced down at her chest, then muttered angrily. "So what if I'm small? If you like big ones so much, why don't you just marry a cow and be done with it?" With that, she stomped off in a huff. Feng Shuo stood there, utterly bewildered, unsure what had just happened. But today's Long Wanqing was completely different from her usual cold, aloof self. Feng Shuo couldn't help but feel she acted more like a young girl, one with intense jealousy. Meanwhile, Yanqi lay in bed, covering her head with the blanket, wishing she could vanish into a hole in the ground. How embarrassing, so embarrassing. She had gotten completely drunk and been brought back by Feng Shuo. Her disgraceful state had been seen by her boss. Finally, her embarrassment began to ease slightly. Slowly, she peeked out from under the covers and looked around the room. The room was neat and simple. On the nightstand sat a photo, a picture of Guogua and Feng Shuo together. Yanqi sat up and picked up the photo, focusing intently on Feng Shua's face. If she wasn't mistaken, this must be Feng Shua's room. She had assumed a man's room would be messy, but to her surprise, it was clean and tidy, everything arranged neatly in order. It must be related to personality. Feng Shua was serious and meticulous. Someone like him would naturally demand the same level of care from his personal space. Lost in thought, Yi Anqi suddenly realized the bed she was lying on was where Feng Shua normally slept. The cup, the pillow, the sheets, all had been used by him, carrying his scent. Grabbing the cup, she held it under her nose and sniffed. Then, like someone inhaling opium, she closed her eyes tightly and deeply breathed in the fragrance of Feng Shua. But at that very moment, she suddenly heard the sound of a door opening. Startled, she nearly jumped out of her skin. She quickly lay back down and dove completely under the blanket. Her heart pounded wildly, almost bursting from her chest. A few seconds later, she heard the bedroom door creak open. If you're awake, get up, wash your face, brush your teeth, and eat breakfast. Then come with me. I'll drop Guogua off before heading to the company. Yi Anqi poked her head out and Mincheng forced a smile. Oh, okay. Feng Shua closed the door and left, and she let out a long breath. She rubbed her chest. She had nearly been scared to death just now, but thankfully Feng Shua hadn't noticed anything. After calming herself down, Yi Anqi quickly got out of bed. When she walked into the bathroom, she was surprised to find that Feng Shua had actually bought her a new toothbrush and towel. It made her feel unexpectedly touched. After finishing her morning routine, Feng Shua had already prepared breakfast. It was more plentiful than she had expected, not only toast and eggs, but also steaming noodles and congee. Yi Anqi had drunk nothing but alcohol last night and hadn't eaten much at all. Later, she'd thrown up everything in her stomach, so now it was completely empty. Seeing so much delicious food, her stomach betrayed her with loud growls. Feng Shua handed her a bowl of white porridge. You drank too much yesterday and then threw up. Your stomach is empty. Start with some congee to soothe your stomach. Don't drink so much next time. Your whole family depends on you alone. If something happens to you, what will your family do? Yes, I understand, boss. Yi Anqi replied, deeply moved inside. She never thought she'd experience being cared for one day. It was a completely new feeling. Not long after, Guogua also woke up. After everyone finished breakfast, Feng Shua first dropped Guogua off at school, then took Yi Anqi to the agricultural products company. Needless to say, Yi Anqi was extremely smart. Although she'd never worked in this industry before, under the guidance of Feng Shua, Hu Yurin, and Qian Lai, she picked everything up very quickly. Once she became proficient, the burden on Feng Shua and the others greatly decreased. Even the coordination with Wei Mei could now be entrusted confidently to Yi Anqi. The business at the agricultural market continued to thrive, and the dividends Feng Shua and his team received kept growing. Now, there was almost 7 million yuan in Feng Shua's account. After repaying Long Wanqing's 3 million, he still had over 4 million left. Before long, Chen Daio's second property phase would begin pre-sales, and by then Feng Shua should have enough capital ready. Just as things were progressing exactly as Feng Shua had planned, he suddenly received a call from Lin Feng. Feng Shua, please save my dad. Chapter 108 Save My Dad. Feng Shua suddenly received a distress call from Lin Feng, frowning slightly. Save your dad? What's happened to him? My dad was arrested, charged with bribery. Lin Feng sobbed. Upon hearing this, Feng Shua instantly understood part of the situation. Recently, Lin Guoxiong had given Fei Ping a bribe in exchange for replacing their product packaging with his company's label. But hadn't that matter already blown over? Feng Shua hadn't intended to pursue it further. So why had Lin Guoxiong still been arrested? Calm down first, said Feng Shua. Tell me exactly what happened from beginning to end. Lin Feng took a moment to steady her emotions. Dad wanted to win back Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company as a major client, so he gave Fei Ping a sum of money, hoping to smooth things over through connections. But for some reason, Fei Ping later returned the money. Dad wasn't willing to give up and tried approaching someone else. But the moment he pulled out the cash, security guards detained him. Then the police came and took him away, saying they're going to press bribery charges. A cold laugh rose in Feng Shua's heart. Instead of focusing on improving product quality, Lin Guoxiong relied on underhanded tricks like these. Even if Feng Shua himself hadn't pursued action, justice had caught up with him anyway. Lin Feng continued. Now, to get my dad released on bail, we need to pay a bond. I don't have that kind of money. That's why I'm reaching out to you for help. Feng Shua replied coolly. Why don't you ask Guan Yinshui? He's practically your future son-in-law. Shouldn't he step in when his future father-in-law is in trouble? Lin Feng hesitated, then after a long silence, stammered. We argued. Feng Shua couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Oh, so you two had a fight, and now he won't help you? And then you come running to me, your ex-husband, for rescue? Lin Feng, just what do you think I am to you? Whenever there's trouble, Guan Yinshui is never useful, yet you always come to me. What am I supposed to be, a fool? We're no longer together. Is it really appropriate for you to ask me for help like this? Lin Feng murmured weakly. I know it's not right, but I've run out of options. I had nowhere else to turn. After all, Dad used to be your father-in-law and grandpa to Guogua. For that alone, can you really stand by and do nothing? Feng Shua wanted to argue back, but what she said wasn't entirely wrong. Regardless of everything else, since Lin Guoxiong was still Guogua's biological grandfather, he couldn't simply ignore the man. Suppressing his anger, Feng Shua asked patiently, how much is the bail? T2 10,000. Lin Feng gritted her teeth. Where is he being held now? Feng Shua asked. At Jiangzhou police station. All of us are here waiting. You'll help me, won't you? Lin Feng asked cautiously. Feng Shua sighed. Wait for me. After hanging up, he immediately drove to Jiangzhou police station. The entire Lin family sat on chairs in the lobby. Zhou Ping had already cried herself into a wreck, while Shi Xiaomei comforted her nonstop. Lin Bing wore a deeply worried expression, sighing helplessly, unable to offer any real solution. Lin Fong sat numbly on the chair, her eyes dull and lifeless. Her close friend, Xiaomei, gently rubbed her back, whispering words of comfort. Fang Shuo walked over and stood before Lin Fong. Where's your dad? Lin Fong looked up, and as if grasping a lifeline, she jumped up and grabbed Fang Shuo's arm desperately. Fang Shuo, you're here. Please save my dad. Save my dad. Fang Shuo gently pulled her hand off. Calm down first. Tell me where he is being kept. He's locked in the detention room. Lin Fong pointed inside. Fang Shuo nodded and turned toward the interior. He had only taken a few steps when Zhou Ping called out, Fang Shuo. He paused and turned to look at her. Zhou Ping's expression was complicated. She stared at him for a long moment before finally saying softly, thank you. Fang Shuo didn't respond, simply continuing forward. Lin Guoxiong's offense fell within the scope of eligible bail. Fang Shuo paid the bond, completed the procedures, and brought Lin Guoxiong out. Now, Lin Guoxiong bore no trace of his former arrogance. His hair was disheveled like a bird's nest, his face smeared with grime, and his clothes torn and ragged. When he saw Fang Shuo, Lin Guoxiong froze for a second, then quickly lowered his head. He felt ashamed to face Fang Shuo, unwilling to be seen in such a pitiful state. Let's go. Lin Fong and the others are waiting outside, Fang Shuo said flatly. Lin Guoxiong nodded silently and stepped forward. Seeing him emerge, the whole family surged forward excitedly, gathering around him. Zhou Ping cried, are you okay? Did they treat you badly? Lin Guoxiong shook his head. I'm fine. Shi Xiaomei quickly urged. All right, let's go back first. Go home quickly, let dad take a bath and get some good rest. I'll cook something delicious to help him calm down. Lin Bing snapped angrily. Eat. What kind of mood do we have for eating at a time like this? Reprimanded, Shi Xiaomei immediately lowered her head and dared not say another word. Lin Bing turned to Lin Guoxiong. Dad, will this incident affect your job? If your workplace finds out, will they remove you from your position? You're the pillar of this family now. There must be no punishment. You've worked so hard to get where you are. If you really lose your position or even your job, what will become of our family in the future? Upon hearing this, Lin Guoxiong stared at his son with an expression of disbelief. At that moment, his own son felt completely unfamiliar to him. His father had just been released from custody, yet all Lin Bing cared about was his job. Was money the only thing he ever thought about? Zhou Ping scowled and snapped. What are you even saying? Move aside now. Don't make things harder for your father. With that, she supported Lin Guoxiong and stepped toward the exit. As they passed by Fang Shuo, Lin Guoxiong stopped and said, Fang Shuo, I know I haven't treated you well in the past, but please, for my grandson Guoguo's sake, could you ask your company not to press charges against me? I don't want to go to jail. Lin Guoxiong's words stunned everyone present. Lin Fong exclaimed in shock. Dad, what are you talking about? What does this have to do with Fang Shuo? Lin Guoxiong sighed. You don't know. The truth is, Fang Shuo is a major shareholder in Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company. He holds 12% of the shares and has absolute decision-making power. If he agrees, the company won't file charges against me. What? Zhou Ping was dumbfounded. Lin Fong was shocked. Lin Bing was speechless. Shi Xiaomei was flabbergasted. Xiaomei was equally astonished. Everyone turned to stare at Fang Shuo in utter disbelief. They couldn't believe their ears. Wasn't Fang Shuo just a nobody? How did he become a shareholder in Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company? And now, he held Lin Guoxiong's fate in his hands. Not long ago, Lin Guoxiong had looked down on Fang Shuo. Yet now, his very destiny rested entirely in Fang Shuo's grasp. Chapter 109 should keep a distance. Fang Shuo said slowly. This matter is already beyond my control. I can settle the civil lawsuit, but when it comes to criminal charges, I'm powerless. However, you can rest assured, I won't pursue it further. As long as I don't press charges, the offense won't be severe. Just find a better defense lawyer and try to reduce the sentence to a year or two. Lin Guoxiong, his face drained of vitality, nodded and said, I understand. Thank you. With that, he and Zhou Ping slowly left the police station. Seeing Lin Guoxiong walk away, Lin Bing turned and shouted at Shi Xiaomei. What are you standing around for? Let's go. Shi Xiaomei muttered in response and followed Lin Bing with her head lowered. Lin Fong turned to Fang Shuo and said, Thank you. Without you, I wouldn't have known what to do. Fang Shuo replied indifferently. It was nothing, really. But next time something like this happens, I hope you'll turn to Guan Yunshuai instead. If you keep coming to me, aren't you afraid he'll misunderstand? Lin Fong's face showed discomfort as she turned her head aside. Xiaomei sighed. Don't mention it. Guan Yunshuai was caught cheating outside by Fang Fong. They're breaking up now, which is why she had no choice but to come to you for help. Fang Shuo nodded expressionlessly. I see. But even so, it's still inappropriate for you to come to me. You haven't officially broken up with Guan Yunshuai yet, so you should keep your distance when necessary. Anyway, since there's nothing else, I'll take my leave now. Take care of yourself. After saying this, Fang Shuo turned to leave. Xiaomei suddenly called out. Fang Shuo, what is it? Fang Shuo stopped. That. Are you really a shareholder of Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company? Fang Shuo frowned. Any problem with that? Xiaomei quickly shook her head. No problem at all. She finally believed it. Fang Shuo was truly not some kept man. His money was genuinely earned. Being a shareholder of Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company sounded impressively prestigious. As a shareholder, he received dividends from the company's profits. And an agricultural products company was no small business. Even with just a 12% stake, the monthly dividend would amount to well over 1 million yuan. Guan Yunshuai's Shufei Industries, at its best, didn't make 1 million a month in profit. Judging by this, Fang Shua was clearly much wealthier than Guan Yunshuai. Who knew what Lin Fang was thinking, passing up such a good man and sticking with Guan Yunshuai instead? If Guan Yunshuai at least remained loyal, it might be forgivable, but he was unfaithful. Last time, he'd been caught fooling around with his young secretary by Xiao Mei. She had hoped he'd behave himself after that, but he showed no remorse whatsoever. In the end, Lin Fang saw it with her own eyes. They had a huge fight, and now they were on the verge of breaking up. Xiao Mei's gaze toward Fang Shua grew increasingly warm. She flashed a flirtatious smile and said, "Oh right, I never properly thanked you for last time. To show my gratitude, let me treat you to a meal sometime." Fang Shua replied flatly, "No need. It wasn't anything important. I have things to attend to, so I'll go now." Watching Fang Shua walk away, Lin Fang frowned and asked, "What last time are you talking about? What happened between you two that I've never heard about?" Xiao Mei quickly explained, "That day during the team building event, after you all left, I tried to take a taxi home, but ran into some thugs. Coincidentally, Fang Shua and Guo passed by and helped me out. I meant to tell you, but then you and Guan Yunshuai had that whole incident, so I forgot." Lin Fang gritted her teeth. "Don't even mention that man again. One betrayal means never again. We're done, completely finished." Xiao Mei urged, Fang, don't act rashly. Breaking up is serious. You need to think carefully before making such a decision." Lin Fang snapped angrily. "Think about what? Thank goodness we're not married yet. If we were, it'd be a disaster." Xiao Mei shook her head. "But after divorcing Guan Yunshuai, what will you do? You're divorced from Fang Shua too, and judging by his attitude, reconciliation seems unlikely. You're not young anymore, and you've been divorced. Even if you meet a good man later, he probably won't want someone like you. Are you planning to live alone for the rest of your life?" Lin Fang froze at those words, then fell silent. Although Xiao Mei's words stung, they were true. Having been divorced and having a child already, her competitiveness was naturally lower than that of younger women. Even if a good man came along, while she might like him, there was no guarantee he'd reciprocate, and Lin Fang wasn't willing to settle for an ordinary man. So, more likely than not, she would indeed end up alone, as Xiao Mei had predicted. Now, she couldn't help feeling regret. If she had known it would come to this, she never would have divorced Fang Shua, no matter what. But it was already too late to regret. Things had gone too far. She had no way back. Lin Fang sighed, feeling extremely annoyed. She and Xiao Mei walked out of the police station, preparing to head home. Just then, her phone suddenly rang. She glanced at the caller ID, her expression immediately changing, and she hung up without answering. But the caller seemed persistent, dialing again. After hanging up 2 or 3 times, she finally pressed the answer button. Shouting into the phone, she said, "Guan Yunshuai, what do you want calling me for? It's over between us, can't you understand? Over. We're finished." Though she spoke those words, Xiao Mei could see a hint of satisfaction in her eyes. Clearly, this so-called breakup was nothing more than talk. In truth, Lin Fang didn't really want to end things. Sure enough, after Guan Yunshuai sincerely apologized and poured on waves of sweet words, she ultimately chose to forgive him. And just like that, they got back together. Xiao Mei witnessed the entire scene from the side. Suddenly, she felt that perhaps Lin Fang wasn't someone worth forming a deep friendship with. She was too selfish, her mind filled only with herself, never considering others. When Lin Guoxiong got into trouble, Lin Fang's first thought was Fang Shua. After Fang Shua helped her overcome the crisis, she turned around and reconciled with Guan Yunshuai. Did she really take Fang Shua for a fool? At this moment, Xiao Mei felt a pang of pity for Fang Shua. After leaving the police station, Fang Shua showed nothing on the surface, but inside, his heart was greatly stirred. In his previous life, Lin Guoxiong's final outcome had been terrible. He embezzled public funds for stock trading. When the crime came to light, he wasn't only dismissed from his post, but also sentenced to 10 years in prison. Without his income, the Lin family completely collapsed. Yet that incident should have happened several years later, and the charge hadn't been bribery. This lifetime, events had deviated subtly from Fang Shua's past experiences. The reason was likely because he had changed history, altering the trajectory of events. Take Long Wanqing, for example. In his previous life, she should have died in a car accident. But in this life, guided by Fang Shua, Long Wanqing had survived. Chapter 110. The misunderstanding runs deep. Many other people had their fates changed because of him. Wang Yuanhang from the Grain Bureau's Market Management Division and Long Wanqing's father Long Tianhai had both narrowly escaped disaster thanks to Fang Shua. This was perhaps what people called the butterfly effect. Any minor change could lead to massive consequences. As a tiny butterfly himself, he might be insignificant in the long river of history. Yet with just a slight flap of his wings, the impact on the future could be enormous. Still, once the wheels of history started turning, they would never stop, and no one could alter the direction of the future. In other words, Fang Shua's actions did indeed affect the future, but such influence wasn't enough to change the overall trajectory. For instance, the real estate market would inevitably boom. That was a certainty. No matter what Fang Shua did or didn't do, he couldn't alter this trend. Therefore, the so-called butterfly effect only worked within limited scope and had no meaningful impact on the broader picture. Nonetheless, Fang Shua silently reminded himself to stay cautious. One way or another, he should avoid interfering with other people's destinies, lest unforeseen consequences emerge later. After work, he went to pick Guoguo up from school. When he arrived at the entrance of the residential compound, he noticed Long Wanqing's car parked there, as if she were waiting for someone. He drove over and parked beside her. Long Wanqing lowered her window and waved at Guogua. Little Guogua, you're out early today? How about we go to the amusement park again this weekend? Guogua clapped excitedly. Yes. I love the amusement park. Feng Shuo frowned. Shouldn't you have asked me before making that decision? Long Wanqing gave him a sidelong glance and said out of nowhere. Why didn't you bring that pretty girl home today? Feng Shuo shrugged. I've already explained it to you. It was just that Xiao Yi got drunk. I didn't know where she lived, so I brought her back. She slept in my room, and I slept on the couch. It wasn't anything like what you're thinking. Then, as if suddenly remembering something, he furrowed his brow and added, Wait, why am I even explaining myself to you? Whether you misunderstand or not is none of my business. Long Wanqing let out a soft humph, rolled up her window, started the engine, and drove into the compound. Over the weekend, despite Feng Shua's objections, Long Wanqing took Guogua to the amusement park again. Although Feng Shua knew Long Wanqing treated Guogua like a little sister, and seeing she meant no harm, he chose to let it slide. The three of them played until very late before returning home. The next morning, while Feng Shua was still asleep, the doorbell suddenly rang urgently. Awakened by the noise, he felt annoyed but restrained himself, fearing Guogua might wake up too. He quickly got out of bed and hurried to answer the door. Opening it, he saw Long Wanqing standing there, visibly panicked. Miss Long, it's our day off. Can't a man get some sleep? Feng Shua snapped irritably. Feng Shua, we're in trouble. Long Wanqing's voice trembled with anxiety. Feng Shua froze. As far as he remembered, she'd never looked this flustered before. What could possibly upset her so much? He asked, what happened? Yesterday, when we took Guogua to the amusement park, someone saw us. That person happens to be one of my dad's men, and he reported it directly to my father. Dad is furious. He's coming here himself. What should I do? Tell me, what should I do? Though fearless in most situations, Long Wanqing was terrified of her father. Upon learning that Long Tianhai was on his way, she completely lost her composure. Her first instinct was to rush straight to Feng Shua and figure out a solution together. Long Tianhai was extremely proud. If word got out that the chairman of Longhai Group had been tricked by two young people, how could he save face? But Long Wanqing was even more worried about his health. After all, he had just undergone surgery and hadn't fully recovered. Learning the truth might be too much for him to bear. Feng Shua invited Long Wanqing inside. They sat on the sofa and began brainstorming. Yet no matter how hard they thought, they couldn't come up with a solid solution. Only now did Long Wanqing truly understand. Keeping one lie required weaving many others. She couldn't help regretting that she hadn't told her father the truth from the beginning, and shouldn't have dragged Feng Shua into this mess. Finally, Feng Shua sighed. Forget it. At this point, we might as well just confess everything. Long Wanqing hesitated for a moment, then realized Feng Shua was right. After all, deception was wrong. Lies, like bubbles, would eventually burst. Just then, the doorbell suddenly rang. Long Wanqing's face changed instantly, and she blurted out, It might be my dad. How could he get here so quickly? Feng Shua quickly stood up and went to answer the door. As soon as he opened it, he saw Long Tianhai standing outside with an expression full of fury, accompanied by several subordinates and bodyguards. Feng Shua wasn't foolish enough to question how Long Tianhai had found out his address. With Long Tianhai's resources, discovering where Feng Shua lived wouldn't have taken more than 5 minutes. Besides, Feng Shua wasn't some important figure. His residential information wasn't classified or confidential. It could be easily looked up. Feng Shua forced a smile and said, Uncle, please come in. Long Tianhai let out a cold snort, then turned to his men and said, Wait for me in the car. Don't follow me. With that, he strode into the living room. Seeing her father, Long Wanqing quickly stood up and lowered her head, saying softly, Dad. Long Tianhai walked over and plopped himself down on the sofa, then glared at Feng Shua. Xiaofeng, you've really disappointed me. I trusted you so much, and yet you teamed up with Wanqing to deceive me. If one of my men hadn't happened to see you yesterday, how long were you planning to keep this hidden from me? Feng Shua glanced at Long Wanqing, cleared his throat awkwardly, and said, I'm sorry, uncle. The truth is, this whole thing was entirely my idea. It has nothing to do with Wanqing. If you're going to hate someone, hate me alone. Please don't blame her. Long Wanqing was shocked by Feng Shua's words. In reality, he had been forced into this entire situation, while she herself was the mastermind. Yet at this crucial moment, he was willingly stepping forward to take responsibility. This act deeply moved her, and she couldn't help but look at Feng Shua a few times with newfound admiration. Neither of you needs to cover for the other. What a disgrace to our family, what a disgrace. Long Tianhai growled, stomping his foot in anger. Worried, Long Wanqing said, Dad, please calm down. Your body hasn't fully recovered yet. Don't get angry. All of this is my fault, entirely mine. I admit my mistake, and I'm willing to accept any punishment. Long Tianhai snorted furiously but ignored her. An oppressive silence fell over the living room. No one spoke, and the atmosphere grew heavy and tense. After a long while, Long Tianhai finally let out a deep sigh. Since it's already happened, being angry won't solve anything. He raised his head and looked at Feng Shua and Long Wanqing. So, where's my granddaughter? Chapter 111. Will you? Feng Shua and Long Wanqing were both taken aback. Long Tianhai snorted. What? Even at this point, you still want to hide it from me? Don't lie to me about just returning to the country. Actually, the two of you have been secretly together for a long time, and even have a daughter already. You two are absolutely outrageous. Fortunately, it was one of my men who saw it. If outsiders found out that my daughter had secretly given birth, where would I, Long Tianhai, put my face. Feng Shuo finally realized that Long Tianhai had completely misunderstood. He assumed Guoguo was Long Wanqing's biological child, which was why he had stormed over in such anger. Feng Shuo hurried to explain, no, 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 uncle, you've misunderstood. Actually, Guoguo. Before he could finish, Long Wanqing yanked him by the arm and stepped forward quickly, declaring, she's my daughter. Feng Shuo turned sharply toward her, eyes wide with disbelief. She actually dared to say that? That was quite a bold bluff. Just moments ago, she had said that telling one lie would require many more to cover it up. And now, only minutes later, she'd already forgotten? If they claimed Guoguo was her daughter, how could they ever backtrack on that later? Besides, such a lie would be easily exposed. If Long Tianhai harbored even the slightest suspicion and investigated at the hospital, he'd discover there was no record of Long Wanqing ever giving birth. Still, Long Wanqing wasn't stupid. What Feng Shuo could think of, she could too. So she quickly added, I gave birth to her overseas. I was afraid you'd get angry, so I kept it hidden from you. The reason she emphasized that the child was born abroad was because, no matter how powerful Long Tianhai was, he wouldn't be able to investigate overseas records. This made it impossible to verify or disprove, the perfect dead-end case. Feng Shuo couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Right now, Long Wanqing was truly shattering his worldview. She was like a little girl who had failed her exam, too afraid to face her parents, so she dragged a classmate into lying with her. Yet strangely, this version of Long Wanqing seemed a bit cuter to Feng Shuo. Compared to her usual self, she felt more emotionally expressive, less cold and distant. Long Tianhai seemed to believe what Long Wanqing had said. He stamped his foot furiously. How foolish can you be? To give birth before marriage, that means your daughter is illegitimate. I'm not someone unreasonable. You could have simply told me beforehand, given me a heads up. If I had known you already had a daughter, would I have forced you into blind dates? In your eyes, am I really some kind of tyrant? I'm furious. Long Tianhai was clearly extremely upset. He pressed a hand to his chest and started breathing heavily. Worried that he might suffer some health issue, Feng Shuo quickly stepped forward. Uncle, please calm down. Let me get you a glass of water. Shut up. You're the most infuriating one of all. After all my hard work raising my daughter, you went and lured her away, then made her bear your child. Long Tianhai pointed straight at Feng Shuo's face. Feng Shuo flashed an awkward smile and stole a quick glance at Long Wanqing. Just then, Guoguo rubbed her sleepy eyes and walked out of the room, mumbling, Dad, who's here? Why is it so noisy? Seeing Guoguo, Feng Shuo's expression changed instantly. On weekends, Guoguo usually slept in late. Children often slept deeply and weren't easily woken. But today, perhaps because of the commotion, she had awakened. Guoguo was still young and knew nothing about the situation between Feng Shuo and Long Wanqing. She might accidentally expose the truth. Long Wanqing immediately realized this too. She quickly walked over and picked Guoguo up. It's okay, sweetheart. Your dad and I are just discussing something with this grandpa. Go back to bed and sleep a little longer. With that, she tried to carry Guoguo back to her room. Long Tianhai bellowed, stop. Bring the child to me. Long Wanqing froze on the spot, motionless. Long Tianhai slammed his hand on the table. Bring her here. Knowing she could no longer avoid it, Long Wanqing reluctantly carried Guoguo over. By now, Guoguo was fully awake and frightened by Long Tianhai. She clung tightly to Long Wanqing's neck, timidly staring at the strange old man. As Long Tianhai looked at Guoguo, within seconds, his furious expression melted away completely, replaced by warm kindness. He nodded and said, this little girl is quite adorable. No doubt about it. She carries the bloodline of our Long family. Still nervous around Long Tianhai, Guoguo whispered, Sis, who is this grandpa? Before Long Wanqing could respond, Long Tianhai roared, ridiculous. Making your own daughter call you sister. How disgraceful. Have you no sense of propriety? Don't you fear being laughed at by others? He spoke those words, but at the same time, he pulled out a velvet box from his pocket. Opening the box revealed a pure gold lock and a matching golden key. This is my gift for the child. Although I'm furious that you two hid her birth from me, she's still my granddaughter, my blood. As Long Tianhai spoke, he slowly stood up, arranged a time to formalize things. I won't have my granddaughter be an unregistered child. He turned and started walking toward the door. Just before stepping out, he suddenly stopped, turned back, and glared at Feng Shuo. Treat my daughter well. If you ever dare hurt her, I'll kill you. With that, Long Tianhai pushed the door open and left. Long Wanqing and Feng Shuo remained rooted in place, speechless for a long while. The turn of events had gone far beyond their expectations. Neither had anticipated such an outcome. Feng Shuo snapped back to reality first. Annoyed, he snatched Guoguo from Long Wanqing's arms and frowned. Didn't we just agree to tell your dad the truth? Now look, things are even more messed up. And now Guoguo is dragged into this. What do we do now? Long Wanqing lowered her head, speaking softly. What if we just go along with it? What did you say? Feng Shuo asked. Nothing. I just panicked and blurted it out. I dragged both of you into this, and I'm truly sorry. But I'll take full responsibility. If my father finds out, I'll face it alone. Feng Shuo shook his head. Even if you're willing to take the blame, I can't escape involvement. Out of everyone here, I'm the most innocent one. Long Wanqing sighed. At this point, we can only keep hiding it for now. Still, there's a silver lining. My father has completely given up on arranging blind dates for me. Feng Shuo retorted bitterly. Great, so you're happy, but Guoguo and I are stuck dealing with the fallout. Don't celebrate yet. Just think about what comes next. Sure, he won't push blind dates anymore, but now he'll push us to get married. Before Long Wanqing could respond, Guogua suddenly piped up. Dad, are you going to marry sister? Does that mean she'll become my mom? Long Wanqing smiled and said, Little Guogua, would you like me to be your mom? Chapter 112, fortunately made it in time. Guogua nodded. Of course I'd like that. My mom has never taken me to amusement parks or treated me to good food. You're much better than my mom. If you were my mom, I'd definitely be willing. Long Wanqing laughed at her words, genuinely delighted. Feng Shuo gently scolded. Guogua, don't say things like that. Marriage is something for adults. Children shouldn't meddle in it. Now go wash your face and brush your teeth. I'll go make breakfast for you. He set Guogua down and sent her off to freshen up. Then he turned to Long Wanqing and said, Your dad's already gone home. You should head back too. But regarding this matter, I still think you ought to come clean with him. With that, he walked into the kitchen to prepare breakfast. By the time Guogua had finished washing up, Feng Shuo had already laid out congee, boiled eggs, bread, and ham. When he brought breakfast to the table, however, he noticed Long Wanqing hadn't left yet. Why are you still here? Feng Shuo frowned. I've already come all the way here. Aren't you going to invite me for breakfast? Long Wanqing said. Feng Shuo shook his head but fetched another set of bowls and chopsticks anyway. The three sat around the table together, looking surprisingly like a little family. The matter with Long Tianhai was temporarily smoothed over, but Feng Shuo still felt uneasy. After all, lying always carried a bit of anxiety. Fortunately, the next few days passed smoothly without any special incidents. Moreover, Feng Shuo received exciting news that lifted his spirits. Chendayo's second-phase housing project had just launched pre-sales. Although construction wasn't complete yet, anyone who bought now would receive a 20% discount. A 20% discount might not sound like much, but property prices were generally high. Any discount meant savings of tens of thousands of yuan. This was already an enormous deal. Due to the exceptionally strong sales of the first phase and the gradually improving real estate market, prices for the second phase had risen significantly compared to the first. Even so, many people continued to inquire about prices. Feng Shuo knew the future trend and, without hesitation, immediately reserved 10 units from Chendayo. Current property prices were around 8,000 yuan per square meter, with each unit averaging about 130 square meters. After applying the 20% discount, each apartment cost roughly 800,000 yuan. 10 units came to 8 million yuan, a fortune by contemporary standards. Hu Yuren and Qian Lai were both stunned when they saw Feng Shuo casually reserve 10 units. Hu Yuren couldn't help but caution him. Brother Feng, although Chendayo is my friend, I still have to warn you. Even though his first project sold extremely well, who can guarantee the same for the second? Investing 8 million yuan at once, if these properties end up unsold, wouldn't that be a huge loss? All your hard work over such a long period would be wasted. Feng Shuo smiled. Don't worry. I'm confident the real estate market will multiply in value in the coming years. If you trust me, join me in buying some units. Of course, if you lack confidence, just keep your money and wait. Hu Yuren and Qian Lai had always trusted Feng Shuo deeply. Without Feng Shuo, one of them would still be selling agricultural products, while the other would remain a small supermarket owner. Neither would have become shareholders in Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company as they were today. Now, their monthly dividends alone were dozens of times what they used to earn. Since Feng Shuo had spoken so confidently, why should they hesitate? Thus, both Hu Yuren and Qian Lai invested every penny they had. Each pre-purchased 7 units, bringing their combined total to 24 units. Seeing them invest all their savings, Yi Anqi also felt tempted. However, she had only managed to save about 400,000 yuan throughout her career, nowhere near enough to participate. She wanted to join in but simply didn't have the financial capacity. But Feng Shuo gave her an idea. Xiao Yezi, if you also want to get into real estate, it's not impossible. Your savings could cover a down payment. Then you can apply for a mortgage loan from the bank. Wouldn't that solve the problem? Yi Anqi looked troubled. But loans carry risks. What if house prices fall instead of rising? I'd lose everything. My family situation is different. I can't afford to take that kind of risk. Feng Shuo shrugged. All investments involve risk. If you want to profit but are too afraid to act, you'll only miss the opportunity. I can only offer advice. I won't force you. After hearing these words, Yi Anqi's hesitant determination suddenly strengthened. She nodded firmly. Following boss means never going wrong. This time, I'm going all in. Feng Shuo nodded. People who aim high need a bit of courage, understand? But you don't have to rush into taking a loan right now. Old Chin's property is only in pre-sale stage. Just pay the deposit for now. You can settle the full payment when it officially launches. There's still plenty of time. Due to her limited funds, Yi Anqi could only reserve 1 unit. But even so, Feng Shuo could guarantee that she would surely earn 1 or 2 million yuan in the future. After everyone had finalized their decisions, Feng Shuo contacted Chen Dayo and reserved 25 apartments. When Chen answered the phone, his voice was filled with excitement. Ah, brother Feng, you're just in time. I was actually worried you might miss out. Feng Shuo was momentarily confused. Miss out? What do you mean? Hehe, you're lucky. I happen to have exactly 25 units left, the last ones, including the ones I'd set aside for myself. They're all included now. Feng Shuo was taken aback. That fast? Is your project really selling that well? Not exactly because of strong sales. Sure, there's been some rush since pre-sale started, but not much has actually sold. Less than 20%. It's Miss Long Wanqing from Longjia Investment Management Company. She bought the majority of my units. A huge move. Her total investment amounts to several 100 million yuan. Feng Shuo frowned. Long Wanqing. A flicker of doubt rose in his mind. Given Longjia's current scale, they shouldn't have access to such a massive sum. Where did she get so much money to pour into Chun Dao's development all at once? And why would she risk investing hundreds of millions like this? Wasn't she afraid of losing everything? Even if she was the heiress of Longhai Group, nobody could afford to waste money so recklessly. What struck him as most puzzling was how Long Wanqing even knew about Chun Dao's property launch. She worked in investment banking, but had never ventured into real estate. Her focus had always been on industrial and catering enterprises. So why had she suddenly decided to invest in property? Venture capital firms never invest in unfamiliar sectors. It's a cardinal rule. Investing blindly in an unknown field often leads to total loss, and there were already plenty of grim examples to prove it. Long Wanqing wasn't someone who acted rashly. If she had invested in real estate, there must be a solid reason behind it. But Feng Shuo couldn't figure out what her motive could possibly be. Chapter 113. Help me quickly. Feng Shuo temporarily suppressed the questions in his mind, asked Chun Dao to help complete the reservation procedures, and then transferred the deposit. After finishing, Feng Shuo immediately called Long Wanqing. I have a question. Why are you spending hundreds of millions to acquire Chun Dao's property project? You don't know much about the real estate industry. I just want to understand your reasoning. Long Wanqing replied coolly. If you can invest in real estate, why can't I? You're being rather domineering, aren't you? Feng Shuo was momentarily stunned, then asked solemnly. How do you know I'm investing? Can't I just be buying them to live in? Can one person really occupy 10 apartments? And if my calculations are correct, the money you use to buy these properties constitutes all of your assets. To put every cent you've worked hard for into real estate, and then tell me it's just for living, really? Feng Shuo hesitated, blurting out. How do you know so much about my affairs? Long Wanqing laughed. We haven't just met yesterday. I know you somewhat. Besides, though you're a bit mysterious, your actions are generally reliable. If you're investing in real estate, that must mean it'll definitely be profitable in the future. So I discussed it with my father, had him inject several $100 million into my company, all allocated for real estate investment. When we make profits later, we'll split the earnings proportionally, with him taking the larger share. Feng Shuo frowned. Your father actually agreed to this? Hundreds of millions, just like that. Long Wanqing said. First, my father didn't accumulate his wealth by chance. He has vision and insight. The potential of the real estate market isn't something only you can see. I and my father both believe in it. Second, you previously told my father that Longhai Group is currently surviving only through government policy subsidies. Once those change, the foundation of our business will collapse. So my father wants to transform our business model. Transformation requires capital, and investment is an excellent path. And third, the most crucial point, since you're investing in real estate, and knowing your personality, you'd never do something without confidence. That's how I'm certain the real estate sector will yield high returns. Her few sentences left Feng Shuo speechless. He had to admit, she was truly impressive, with extremely accurate judgment on the situation. Most importantly, she understood Feng Shuo deeply. Seeing his move into real estate, she had acted swiftly to follow suit. What, nothing to say? Long Wanqing teased. Feng Shuo remained silent for a moment before replying. But how did you even know I was going to invest in real estate? Every one of your moves falls within my awareness. Long Wanqing smiled. Feng Shuo's face darkened. Are you having someone spy on me? That's not the right way to put it. I'm merely paying close attention to you. How could that be called surveillance? You should feel honored, because ever since I entered the industry, apart from some international financial elites, I've never paid this much attention to anyone else. Feng Shuo snorted. Should I thank you then? Without waiting for her response, he hung up the phone directly. Though slightly resentful, he couldn't deny that Long Wanqing's mind was exceptionally sharp. Though she didn't voice it, her actions had already shown that she recognized Feng Shuo's strategy and thinking. Including Long Tianhai, they all believed in the promising future of real estate. However, Feng Shuo knew the boom in real estate would last only for a few years. Once policies changed later on, making money from this sector would become far more difficult. Although real estate prices would continue rising in the future, that would be driven purely by rigid demand. 20 years later, thanks to robust national economic growth and a surge in marriageable age population, housing demand would spike sharply, keeping prices high. That was simply a trend of market economy development, unrelated to other factors. Moreover, in the future, the state would introduce many restrictive policies precisely to prevent malicious speculation in housing and price inflation. By that time, making profits in the real estate market would indeed be extremely challenging. Real estate could certainly generate profit, but it wasn't a sustainable long-term strategy. This was exactly why Feng Shuo planned to establish agricultural bases in the future. The next day, Chen Dao sent someone to deliver the receipts to Feng Shuo. Given their relationship, formal receipts weren't necessary. Still, everyone had their own procedures. What should be provided must be provided. Feng Shuo handed the receipts over to Hu Yurin for safekeeping. Old Hu was older, meticulous, and steady in his work, making him the perfect choice for holding on to such documents. Just as Feng Shuo was preparing to start work, he suddenly received an unknown call. When he answered, before he could speak, a frantic female voice came through. Feng Shuo? Is that you? Feng Shuo? Come quickly, save me. Feng Shuo frowned. Who is this? How do you have my number? It's Xiao Mei. Please save me. I'm in the VIP room at Huangpin KTV. Come quickly. If you're late, I'm done for. Xiao Mei's voice was anxious and panicked. Feng Shuo shook his head. If you're in trouble, why don't you call Lin Feng? Why call me? Before she could finish, the phone suddenly went dead. Feng Shuo called out hello several times, but there was no response. A sense of urgency gripped him. He immediately stood up, rushed to his car, and sped toward Huangpin KTV. Regardless of why Xiao Mei had called him, She clearly sounded like she was in real danger. That was just Feng Shua's nature. He wouldn't stand by and ignore someone in need, even if it had nothing to do with him. Xiaomei wasn't close to him. If she hadn't been truly desperate, she probably wouldn't have called him at all. Feng Shua arrived at Huangpin KTV as fast as he could. He went straight to the VIP room and pushed the door open. The room was thick with choking smoke, hazy and suffocating, almost blinding. On the large sofa, a young man was pinning Xiaomei firmly beneath him. Her clothes were disheveled, her hair tangled, and she looked utterly miserable. Though she struggled desperately, her strength couldn't match his, leaving her helpless. Feng Shua strode over and yanked the young man off Xiaomei. Thanks to his daily workouts, he was powerfully built. The man was flung straight onto the floor. Xiaomei had thought she was finished, but then Feng Shua appeared just in time. She quickly pulled her clothes back into place, scrambled to her feet, and hid behind Feng Shua. Her hands clutched tightly to the hem of his shirt, like a drowning person grasping a lifeline. The young man, furious that his advances had been interrupted, leapt to his feet and shouted furiously at Feng Shua. "Who the hell are you? How dare you interfere with me? You looking to die?" Feng Shua ignored him. Turning to Xiaomei, he asked, "Are you okay?" Xiaomei was clearly terrified, barely able to speak. She shook her head weakly to indicate she was all right. "Who is this guy?" Feng Shua gestured toward the young man. "A client from our company." Xiaomei managed to stammer out. Chapter 114. We've already cut ties. Feng Shua immediately understood what was going on. He took Xiaomei's hand and started walking toward the exit. The young man rushed ahead, blocking the doorway with a menacing glare. Trying to leave? Not so fast. Xiaomei, think carefully. If you step 1 foot outside this place, your company's orders for the second half of the year are finished. Done. If your boss holds you responsible, you'll have no one to blame but yourself. Stay or go, that's your choice. Feng Shua remained silent and turned to look at Xiaomei. He had no right to make such decisions for others. Everyone's circumstances were different, so he couldn't judge based on his own beliefs alone. Xiaomei didn't hesitate. She shouted back, "Go to hell. Your measly order isn't even worth my time. Do you really think you're someone important? Let me tell you, given what you just did, I wouldn't mind calling the police and having you arrested. If you want to report me, go ahead. At worst, I'll quit. Like anyone here is irreplaceable anyway." Turning to Feng Shua, she said, "Let's go." Feng Shua nodded, pushed the young man aside, and led Xiaomei out of the KTV. Once outside, Xiaomei's legs gave way and she nearly collapsed. Feng Shua supported her and helped her sit down on the nearby steps before asking, "Are you okay?" Xiaomei frowned and shook her head. Biting her lower lip, she muttered gloomily, "Looks like I'm truly finished this time. I've offended an important client. My boss won't let me off the hook for this." Hearing this, Feng Shua finally realized that her earlier bravado had been nothing more than a show. In truth, she had no confidence at all. She'd spoken that way only because she refused to let herself be harassed by a client. But the consequences could be severe. She might face punishment from the company, or even lose her job. Feng Shua said seriously, "You did nothing wrong just now. No matter how big a client is, they can't use orders as leverage to force you into doing something you don't want to do. You work for the company, you're not selling yourself. If you compromise just to keep an order, then what's the difference between you and a prostitute?" Xiaomei lifted her head and looked at Feng Shua. The despair in her eyes had vanished. "You're right. I don't have to agree to unreasonable demands. Even if the company fires me, they need a valid reason. If it's over something like this, I can sue them in court." Feng Shua shook his head. "You're too naive. If the company really wants to get rid of you, do you think they'd use this as their excuse? There are plenty of other reasons they could come up with to justify firing you. Honestly, you shouldn't have called me just now. You should have called the police. If law enforcement got involved, your company would hesitate twice before taking action against you. As for that client of yours, he'd likely face some form of administrative penalty." Xiaomei forced a bitter smile. "My mind was completely blank. I couldn't think straight. When I realized that guy had bad intentions, I panicked. All I could think about was calling you for help." Feng Shua frowned. "That's what I don't understand. Why call me? You should have called Lin Feng. Since she's with Guan Yunshui, she could have spoken on your behalf. It wouldn't have been a problem at all." Xiaomei looked pained and slowly shook her head. "Lin Feng and I have cut ties." Feng Shua exclaimed in surprise. "Why? Aren't you two best friends?" Xiaomei sighed. "It's a long story. Let's find somewhere to sit. I'll tell you everything slowly." After a moment's thought, Feng Shua found a bench in a nearby park. He let Xiaomei sit down first, then went and bought her a bottle of water to help calm her nerves. Xiaomei took a sip and began softly. "It all started during our last team-building event. I accidentally caught Guan Yunshui and his secretary together, intimately involved. At first, I wanted to tell Lin Feng, but Guan Yunshui threatened me, warning me not to say anything. I was afraid of losing my job, so I kept quiet. But later, Lin Feng found out about Guan and the secretary anyway. They had a huge fight and broke up. Then her father ran into trouble, and she asked you to help. Right after you resolved things for her, Guan Yunshui called and asked to reconcile. And just like that, with a few sweet words, she forgave him completely. They got back together as if nothing had happened. At that point, I realized Lin Feng was too selfish. Someone like that isn't worth being close friends with. After that incident, I started feeling a distance growing between us. Not long after, Guan Yunshui made up some excuse and fired his secretary. I thought maybe he'd changed, that he wanted to settle down with Lin Feng for real. But instead, he turned around and told me he wanted to pursue me. Of course I couldn't agree, so I refused. But he kept pestering me, harassing me over and over. And once, when he sent me a suggestive message, Lin Feng happened to find out. Guan Yunshui actually claimed that I was the one who came onto him. At this point, Feng Shuai basically understood what had happened. Lin Feng had believed Guan Yunshuai's words and ended her friendship with Xiao Mei. And Xiao Mei being assigned to entertain such a client was likely orchestrated jointly by Guan Yunshui and Lin Feng. No wonder Xiao Mei had turned directly to Feng Shuai for help instead of going to Lin Feng. Besides, Feng Shuai had helped her before. Naturally, she'd think of him first. It seems you probably won't be able to stay at the company anymore. Have you thought about finding another path for yourself? Feng Shuai asked. Xiao Mei shook her head. I haven't figured it out yet. After all, I've worked there for many years. I've developed some attachment. Also, I'm worried. I'm afraid Guan Yunshui will sabotage me behind the scenes, ruin my reputation everywhere. If that happens, I won't be able to survive in this industry. I'm not young anymore. If I switch industries now, I'll have to start from scratch. I don't have much time to begin again, and besides, no company would want to hire someone older who doesn't know anything. Xiao Mei's concerns weren't baseless. The workplace wasn't particularly kind to women, especially in this era, where many laws and regulations remained underdeveloped, leading numerous companies to discriminate against female employees. It wasn't just switching industries. Many companies wouldn't even hire women like Xiao Mei who were unmarried and childless. Marriage meant paid leave. Childbirth meant maternity leave. These were seen as burdens and risks for employers. Changing jobs sounded easy in theory, but in reality, it was incredibly difficult. Of course, if Feng Shuai wanted to, he could easily find Xiao Mei a good opportunity. To say nothing else, there were openings at the agricultural products company where she'd be perfectly qualified. Even if she didn't join their company, going to Long Wanqing's Longjia would also be a solid choice. But Xiao Mei and Feng Shuai weren't close. The fact that he had come to rescue her already counted as being principled and loyal. He wasn't an indiscriminate do-gooder with no boundaries. He wouldn't help just anyone. Chapter 115, The Verdict. Feng Shuai remained silent throughout, because everyone had their own hardships, and how to overcome them was a personal matter. He had no reason nor obligation to help Xiao Mei solve her problems. Still, thank you for saving me. I told you before, I wanted to treat you to a meal. I haven't even had the chance to properly thank you, and now you've saved me again. So now I owe you twice. I don't know how I can ever repay you, Xiao Mei said, touched. Feng Shuai replied calmly, no need to thank me. We've known each other for a while. If you're in danger, stepping in is only natural. Besides, saving a life surpasses building a 7-story pagoda. Consider it me doing a good deed. Where are you heading now? Let me drive you there. Xiao Mei thought for a moment and said, I don't feel like going back to the company just yet. Even if I did, I wouldn't know how to face Lin Feng and Guan Yunshui. Just take me home for now. I need some time alone. They got into the car. Feng Shuai started the engine and drove toward Xiao Mei's place. He remembered the general direction from having driven her once before. After dropping Xiao Mei off outside her housing complex, she prepared to get out. As she opened the door, she turned and said, Want to come up for a bit? It's just me at home. Feng Shuai politely declined. No thanks for the offer. I have other things to attend to. Don't want to intrude. Xiao Mei smiled faintly. What? Afraid I'll eat you alive? Feng Shuai shook his head. Just being cautious. She sighed softly. You really are a true gentleman. Any other man, even without an invitation, would find some excuse to follow me home. I'll never understand why Lin Feng left you for a scumbag like Guan Yunshui. Feng Shuai shrugged. Everyone has different views on relationships. Maybe Lin Feng just thought we weren't right for each other. Hearing this, Xiao Mei couldn't help but sneer. Different views on relationships? In truth, Lin Feng was just selfish. When Feng Shuai fell on hard times, she abandoned him without hesitation and threw herself into Guan Yunshui's arms. Wasn't she simply unwilling to endure hardship and poverty with Feng Shuai? She didn't even care about their daughter anymore. To think that she'd once considered such a person her closest friend, it was clear she hadn't judged people well at all. Luckily, they'd cut ties. Xiao Mei could now keep her distance from someone like Lin Feng. After seeing Xiao Mei disappear into the residential complex, Feng Shuai drove away. Back at the company, Fei Ping specially came to his office. Though he'd been removed from shareholder meetings, Feng Shuai hadn't pressed charges, which spared Fei Ping from prison. Out of gratitude, Fei Ping still harbored a bit of appreciation toward him. Seeing Fei Ping, Feng Shuai asked curiously, Manager Fei, do you need something? Fei Ping smiled and said, I came to inform you of something. Jiangzhou Packaging Company, Limited just released a public statement. Lin Guoxiong, former director of the Supply and Marketing Department, has been dismissed due to suspected criminal activities. Hearing that Lin Guoxiong had been fired didn't surprise Feng Shuai in the least. Dismissal was lenient. Given Lin Guoxiong's long tenure, the company could have pursued further liability otherwise. Nonetheless, Lin Guoxiong definitely couldn't escape conviction for bribery. The company chose merely to dismiss him instead of piling on more punishment. That was luck enough for him. If the Lin family was willing to spend money to hire a competent lawyer, his sentence might be reduced. Otherwise, he was looking at 2 or 3 years behind bars. This outcome was already merciful by Feng Shuai's standards. Had Feng Shuai pressed further by filing additional lawsuits, Lin Guoxiong could have received extra years and faced civil damages too. Lin Guoxiong's fate was sealed. And now, he had nothing to do with Feng Shuai, so Feng felt little interest in the matter. He nodded slightly. Got it. Thanks for letting me know. Fei Ping bowed slightly and left Feng Shuai's office. A few days later, Lin Guoxiong's case officially went to trial. With clear facts and solid evidence, the hearing lasted barely over an hour before the verdict was delivered. Lin Guoxiong was sentenced to 3 years in prison and stripped of political rights. Unsatisfied with the judgment, he appealed on the spot. The second trial would take place in a month, while Lin Guoxiong himself was temporarily detained in custody. When Feng Shuai learned of the result, he felt somewhat surprised. Why was Lin Guoxiong sentenced to exactly 3 years? For this crime, the maximum penalty was 3 years. Even with a decent lawyer, it could have been argued down to 1 year. Had the Lin family not hired a lawyer? Of course, Fang Shua was only mildly curious. Whether Lin Guoxiong hired a lawyer or not meant nothing to him. Right now, the only thing on his mind was when Chun Daio's real estate project would be completed. Once the construction ended, the price of all his properties would immediately double, bringing him nearly 10 million yuan in profit. After work, Fang Shua went to pick Guoguo up from school. On their way home, Guoguo brought up again how that fat boy in her class had been bullying her. That chubby boy had stayed quiet for a while after Guoguo played a prank on him. But recently, for some unknown reason, he'd started harassing her again. Fang Shua warned his daughter that while it was okay to resist bullying at school, she mustn't fight. He told her not to resort to physical force unless absolutely necessary. After dinner, Guoguo went to her room to do homework. By 8 o'clock, she had gone to bed on her own. Meanwhile, Fang Shua sat at his desk, drafting a future development plan for the agricultural products market. Once Chen Daio's real estate project was completed, he could officially leave the agricultural products company. Although the company would continue to grow, its pace and scale of expansion would be limited from now on. To Fang Shua, that meant it no longer held much significance. It would be time to part ways then. Still, having spent a considerable time at the company and accumulated substantial funds through it, Fang Shua didn't intend to leave abruptly. He wanted to leave something behind, something that would help the company maintain its current momentum. When people focus deeply on a task, they easily lose track of time. By the time Fang Shua finished writing, it was already midnight. He stretched his arms and prepared to go to sleep. But just then, his phone suddenly rang. He frowned. Who could be calling him at such a late hour? Picking up the phone, he checked the caller ID. It was Xiao Mei. Why was she calling so late at night? Was she in trouble again? Fang Shua quickly pressed the answer button. Before he could even speak, he heard a man's voice say, "Hello, this is Alan Barr. Your friend got drunk, and we can't wake her up no matter how much we try. We're closing soon. Could you please come pick her up?" "All right, please give me the address," Fang Shua replied. The man gave him the location, and Fang Shua immediately headed over. When he arrived at the bar, there wasn't a single customer left. Xiao Mei was alone, slumped over a small round table, completely unconscious from drinking. Chapter 116, Drowning Sorrows in Wine. A bartender approached Fang Shua quickly upon spotting him. "You must be Mr. Fang, right? This young lady got drunk, and we can't wake her up. So we had to try calling someone from her phone contacts. I noticed her most recent call was to you, so I assumed you might be friends, and that's why I called you." Fang Shua nodded and walked over, gently shaking Xiao Mei. "Hey, wake up, wake up." Xiao Mei waved him off irritably, but showed no intention of getting up. Feeling slightly embarrassed, Fang Shua glanced at the bartender and forced a smile. Just how much did she drink anyway? The bartender shrugged, indicating he didn't know either. Fang Shua kept trying to rouse Xiao Mei, but nothing worked. Finally, with no other choice, he picked her up in his arms and carried her out of the bar. He laid her carefully on the back seat, then drove to the entrance of her residential complex. After parking, Fang Shua went to the back seat and shook Xiao Mei again. "Hey, Xiao Mei, we're here. Tell me which building you're in. I'll take you upstairs." Her speech slurred. Xiao Mei mumbled her address. Fang Shua caught the general idea, but wasn't entirely sure. Still, he couldn't worry about that now. He lifted her into his arms and entered the apartment complex. It took considerable effort, but eventually he found her place. Since she lived alone, the door could only be opened with a key. He rummaged through her handbag for a long time, but couldn't locate it. He tried waking Xiao Mei again to ask where the key was. She pointed at her chest and giggled. "The key is hanging around my neck. You thought it was just a necklace, but it's actually my key. I've always been losing things since childhood, so I turned my key into a necklace to avoid losing it. Pretty clever, huh?" "Very clever, very clever," Fang Shua replied half-heartedly as he reached for the key around her neck. But the key hung right between her breasts, and the clasp needed to be unhooked before it could be removed. The positioning made it extremely awkward. Fang Shua hesitated. How could he retrieve the key without touching her? After a long pause, he decided to have Xiao Mei do it herself. He gave her another shake. "Take the key off and give it to me. I'll open the door for you." Hearing this, Xiao Mei lifted her head and stared at him. After a few seconds, she suddenly burst into laughter. Then, she pushed her chest forward playfully. "Here it is. Go ahead and take it if you dare." Fang Shua frowned. "Stop fooling around. Just take the key off so I can get you inside. Once you're home, I'm leaving. The key's right here. Come and get it yourself. If you're too scared to even grab a key, what a coward." Xiao Mei teased, laughing softly. Fang Shua cursed under his breath. Drunk women are terrifying. Fortunately, he remembered something she'd said earlier. Because she often lost things, she'd turned her key into a necklace to prevent losing it. Usually, people like that would also hide a spare key somewhere near their front door, just in case. Maybe Xiao Mei had done the same? On a hunch, Fang Shua began searching around the doorway. And luckily, under the welcome mat, he found a spare key and managed to unlock the door. He carried Xiao Mei inside and gently laid her flat on the bed. Just as he turned to leave, Xiao Mei suddenly groaned in pain and made 2 dry heaving motions. "Hold it in, don't throw up yet," Fang Shua shouted. At once, he dashed into the bathroom, grabbed a wash basin, and rushed back out. Almost instantly, Xiao Mei couldn't hold it anymore and started vomiting. Fortunately, Fang Shua was fast enough. He caught everything in the basin. After throwing up, Xiao Mei's face looked slightly better. She opened her eyes, glanced at Fang Shua, and asked in surprise, "Why are you in my house?" Fang Shua replied dryly, "You passed out drunk. The bartender saw your call history and called me directly." Understanding dawned on Xiao Mei's face. Then she smiled faintly, closed her eyes, and fell asleep. Feng Shuo sighed helplessly, emptied the basin, cleaned it thoroughly, and put it away. Then he made a cup of tea and placed it on her nightstand before finally leaving. First Yanqi, now Xiaomei. Feng Shuo swore to himself never again would he look after a drunken woman. They were simply too much trouble. By the time he got home, it was already past 1. Since he had to send Guogua to school the next morning, he quickly went to bed. The next day, when he woke up, his head was pounding. His sleep had been far too short, and his mind felt heavy and foggy. He quickly splashed cold water on his face to snap himself awake, then hurried to make breakfast for Guogua and took her to school. After dropping Guogua off, Feng Shuo was just about to head back to the company when he received a call from Xiaomei. Feng Shuo, I'm really sorry about last night. I caused you so much trouble. I owe you again, Xiaomei said, her words clear. She must have sobered up by now. Feng Shuo replied flatly. Since you know you troubled me, please don't get that drunk next time. It's dangerous for a single woman to pass out in public. Xiaomei sighed. I was drowning my sorrows, that's why I went to the bar. I've been fired from the company. The reason they gave was serious mistakes at work resulting in significant losses to the company. And worse, HR issued an industry-wide notice about it. That means no company will dare hire me again. In this field, my career is completely ruined. Feng Shuo had guessed right. When a company wanted someone gone, any excuse would do. That so-called serious mistake was nothing but empty words. But he hadn't expected Guan Yunshui and Lin Fong to go this far, issuing an industry-wide notification. That was pushing someone into a corner with no way out. This must have been Guan Yunshui's idea. To prove his loyalty, he'd chosen such a harsh move. And since Lin Fong believed everything Guan Yunshui said, she silently approved it. The real victim here was Xiaomei, suffering this disaster through no fault of her own. Feng Shuo wanted to say something comforting, but didn't know where to begin. Besides, given their relationship, it wasn't really his place to console her. Do you have time now? Can you come over and talk with me for a bit? Xiaomei asked. Where are you? Feng Shuo asked. I'm at home. Xiaomei paused. She probably figured Feng Shuo wouldn't want to come to her place, so she quickly added, there's a small bar near my house. It should be open by now. Let's meet there. Feng Shuo frowned. Still drinking? Other than drinking, I can't think of anything else. I'll send you the address shortly. I'll wait for you. With that, Xiaomei hung up. Not long after, she sent the bar's address to Feng Shuo. More than 10 minutes later, Feng Shuo arrived at the bar. Chapter 117, Kill the Body, Destroy the Spirit. Under normal circumstances, few people came to drink so early in the morning. The bar was empty, no customers in sight, not even a bartender besides Xiaomei. Xiaomei sat alone at the counter, though she wasn't drinking alcohol. Instead, she had ordered a prepared soft drink. Feng Shuo walked over and sat beside her. Are you feeling all right? Xiaomei managed a weak smile. Thank you for your tea. I woke up in the middle of the night with a terrible headache. After drinking a few sips of your tea, I finally felt better. No matter how unhappy something makes you, you shouldn't drink yourself into that state. What's done is done. No amount of despair can change it. Drinking only harms your body. It's not worth it. Feng Shuo signaled to a waiter and ordered a glass of orange juice. Xiaomei gave a bitter laugh. People need some way to release their emotions. If I keep everything bottled up, I think I'd go mad. And I don't really have anyone to talk to, so all I could do was go out and drink. Feng Shuo sighed, but said nothing. He and Xiaomei weren't particularly close, so he didn't know how to comfort her. All he could do was listen, to be there as an audience to her pain. Before you arrive, the company's HR department called me. They said I caused them substantial losses and must pay compensation. The amount is 200,000, and it must be paid within a specified period. If I refuse to pay the fine, the company reserves the right to sue me. But if I agree to pay, they promise to withdraw my name from the industry blacklist. I'm just not sure what to do anymore. If I want to continue working in this field, I'll have to obediently pay up. But my monthly salary is barely anything. Even after years of scrimping and saving, I've only managed to put aside about 50 or 60,000. Xiaomei's face twisted in distress. I really don't know what to do. 200,000 might as well be $1 million to me. It's completely out of reach. After finishing her words, she lightly bit her lip. Hesitating for a long while, she finally spoke again. Maybe it's inappropriate for me to say this, but I truly have no other options left. Feng Shuo, could you possibly lend me 150,000? I swear I'll pay you back. It might just take some time. Of course, I know we're not close. If you turn me down, I won't blame you at all. Xiaomei knew Feng Shuo was wealthy. As a major shareholder of Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company, 200,000 would be pocket change to him. That was why she had forced herself to swallow her pride and ask. But the moment the words were out, she regretted them. After all, they weren't close. Asking for money like this was inappropriate, especially such a large sum. And hadn't she once been Lin Feng's closest friend? Feng Shuo had every reason not to help her. Yet as she'd said herself, she was utterly desperate. She asked not because she expected help, but in a final act of hope. And she'd already prepared herself emotionally. If he refused, she wouldn't feel crushed. After a brief pause, Feng Shuo said, your company wants you to pay 200,000, yet you're only asking me to borrow 150,000? Xiaomei replied, I've saved 50 or 60,000 myself, so 15,000 more would be enough. Feng Shuo shook his head. You're too naive. Even if you somehow come up with 200,000, your company will still find other excuses to increase their claim against you. Then it won't stop at 200,000. It'll grow even higher. Xiaomei blinked, confused. I don't understand. What are you saying? Feng Shuo sneered coldly. I've never heard of a company demanding compensation from an employee after they resign. Without even asking. I know. This is Guan Yunshuai's name written all over it. This is what they call killing the body while destroying the spirit. HR calling you, telling you there's a way out if you pay. That seems like hope, but it's actually plunging you deeper into despair. The cruelest moment isn't when you're at rock bottom. It's when hope is right in front of you. Yet no matter how hard you try, you can't reach it. Guan Yunshuai clearly understands your situation. That's why he set the compensation at exactly 200,000. He knows full well you can't afford it. Your age makes it nearly impossible to restart in another field. So he knows you'll grasp at this chance, willing to pay 200,000 just to stay in this industry. But that 200,000? For you, it's both a lifeline and an unreachable dream. He dangles hope before you, knowing full well he'll never let you achieve it. That's where his malice lies. So even if you somehow scrape together the 200,000 and pay the fine, he'll still find other reasons to demand more. Only then will you truly understand what real despair feels like. Xiao Mei's face turned pale. How could he do this to me? What did I ever do to him? Feng Shuo shrugged. I don't know the answer. Maybe he's just twisted by nature. Or perhaps he resents you for rejecting him. Either way, he simply doesn't want to see you live in peace. Xiao Mei's face turned pale. Her voice trembled as she said, Then what should I do? Should I really abandon everything and switch to another career? I've already asked around. There's nothing suitable for someone my age now except being a salesperson at a mall. Finally, she couldn't hold back anymore and burst into tears. Why is my fate so cruel? What sin did I commit to deserve such suffering? Are they really going to bully me, a helpless woman, like this? Feng Shuo looked at Xiao Mei with a touch of sympathy and sighed. This world often works exactly like this. It's filled with malice. That's why some people choose to fight back and crush it beneath their feet. As he spoke, he pulled out a checkbook from his pocket. In this era, mobile internet wasn't yet widespread. While functions like WeChat Pay and Alipay existed, many banks still didn't support them. So, for convenience, Feng Shuo always carried a checkbook with him. Writing checks was far more convenient than carrying stacks of cash. With a few quick strokes, he wrote down an amount, tore off the check, and placed it in front of Xiao Mei. Then he put away the checkbook and pen, saying calmly, You have 10 years to repay me, principal plus interest. I'm not doing charity here. I'm not noble enough to lend money without charging interest. Given your capabilities, 10 years should be plenty of time. I won't overcharge you on interest, just the bank's current account rate will do. Xiao Mei could hardly believe Feng Shuo had actually agreed to lend her the money. She picked up the check and glanced at it, and froze completely. The amount written on it was 500,000. At this time and place, 500,000 yuan was enough to buy a 40 or 50 square meter apartment in the city center. And he handed it to her just like that, without even flinching. And although Feng Shuo claimed he would charge interest, the bank's current account rate was practically negligible. Splitting 500,000 over 10 years meant just 50,000 per year. As long as she worked hard, took on a part-time job alongside her main work, she could definitely manage it. Besides, 10 years was a long time. If she ever seized one good opportunity and made a big sum, she could pay it all back immediately. Chapter 118. Making Baseless Arguments. Xiao Mei lived alone, so apart from her daily expenses, she also did some investment and financial planning. She had once followed others into stock trading and even made a small profit. If she could just ride one market wave in the next 10 years, it might actually be possible to pay off the entire 500,000. That sum of 500,000 yuan was undoubtedly solving her most pressing problem right now. Why are you giving me 500,000? Xiao Mei asked. Don't ask why. Just keep it for now. If you don't end up needing it, you can always return it to me later, Feng Shuo said, downing his orange juice in one go before leaving a 100 yuan note on the table. Then he turned and walked out of the bar. Xiao Mei stared at the 500,000 yuan check, her heart pounding with emotion. Feng Shuo was neither a relative nor particularly close to her, yet he kept helping her repeatedly. Could it be that he had feelings for her? In the past, Xiao Mei would have looked down on Feng Shuo. From what Lin Feng had told her, Feng Shuo was completely unmotivated, always drinking or sleeping, like a pile of mud that couldn't stick to the wall. Yet after actually getting to know him, she discovered he was not only intelligent, but also hardworking. Through his own efforts, he had bought an apartment, purchased a car, and even become a major shareholder in the company. He was nothing like the worthless person Lin Feng had described. Although they hadn't spent much time together, Xiao Mei noticed that Feng Shuo didn't possess the typical bad habits of wealthy men. He was modest, not flirtatious, and very upright. He was exactly the kind of man every woman dreams of. And he was also Xiao Mei's ideal man. Still, Xiao Mei knew that Feng Shuo already had Long Wanqing by his side, and Long Wanqing was the heiress of Long Hai Group. How could she, just an ordinary employee, possibly compare? At this thought, Xiao Mei suddenly felt deflated. Why does a good man always have someone insurmountable standing beside him? With a heavy heart, Xiao Mei left the bar. First, she went to the bank, cashed the check, and withdrew 500,000 yuan in cash. Then, carrying 200,000 of it, she headed to the Human Resources Department of Shifei Industries. I'm here to pay the penalty fee. Here's 200,000 yuan. Please count it, Xiao Mei said expressionlessly. The HR manager was completely unprepared for Xiao Mei to appear with 200,000 yuan so quickly. He stood stunned for a moment before stammering. Why you wait a second? I need to report this to Manager Guan first. The manager immediately called Guan Yunshuai. 5 minutes later, Guan Yunshuai arrived at the HR department. He glanced at Xiao Mei and frowned. You've paid the 200,000 yuan penalty? Xiao Mei nodded, pointing to the neatly stacked cash on the table. Yes, it's all here. Please count it yourselves. Guan Yunshuai, with a stern face, signaled the HR manager, who promptly took the money to the finance department for verification. A few moments later, the HR manager returned and whispered a few words into Guan Yunshuai's ear. Guan Yunshuai narrowed his eyes. He truly hadn't expected Xiao Mei to gather 200,000 yuan in such a short time. Based on his understanding, she shouldn't have that much money. Xiao Mei said calmly, "Finished counting? Then please remove the industry-wide notice about me. Make it quick. I have interviews at other companies this afternoon." After a brief moment of darkening expression, Guan Yunshuai suddenly broke into a smile. "Xiao Mei, wait a moment. Yes, you've indeed paid the 200,000 yuan penalty. However, you must also bear the subsequent losses your actions caused to the company." Xiao Mei's face changed. "What did you say? I've already paid you 200,000. What more losses do you want me to cover?" Guan Yunshuai said smugly. "Look, your actions caused the company to lose a major client. That client's annual orders brought substantial profits to the company. That's direct loss. But beyond direct loss, the company will suffer even greater indirect losses. This client has significant influence in the industry. One word from him could cause us to lose numerous cooperation opportunities. Therefore, you must compensate for these losses as well." Xiao Mei stared fiercely at Guan Yunshuai, her teeth tightly clenching her lower lip. She hadn't expected it. Feng Shuai had been right all along. Guan Yunshuai indeed had no intention of limiting her compensation to just 200,000 yuan. He had simply fabricated another excuse, demanding she compensate the company further. This so-called indirect loss was utterly absurd. If they calculated things this way, then any future misfortune that befell the company could somehow be blamed on Xiao Mei. Clenching her teeth, Xiao Mei snapped. You're making baseless arguments. Whether this client truly holds such great influence is debatable, but your so-called indirect losses are completely groundless. This kind of loss is completely unquantifiable, and how much I pay depends entirely on your word. If you demand an outrageous amount, won't I be unable to repay it my entire life?" Guan Yunshuai shook his head. No, don't talk nonsense. I always act reasonably and fairly. There's no way I'd make unreasonable demands. I've already made a rough estimate and have the figures in mind. Considering you're a long-time employee of the company, I won't push too hard. Just compensate 30,000, that's all. And I'm only showing you this leniency because of Lin Fang. Xiao Mei clenched her fists tightly and shouted. "I've already compensated the company with 20,000. Now you want another 30,000 from me? How is this not outrageous? All the money I've saved throughout my career amounts to only 50 or 60,000. I barely managed to come up with the 20,000. Now you expect me to pay another 30,000 to the company? Where am I supposed to get so much money?" Guan Yunshuai shrugged. "That's your problem. I'm simply following company rules and regulations. You decide for yourself whether to pay the 30,000 or let the company issue an industry-wide notice against you. The choice is yours." Having said that, Guan Yunshuai burst into loud laughter. Xiao Mei's eyes burned with fury. If Feng Shuai hadn't warned her beforehand, she might have truly felt hopeless at this moment. She had thought paying 20,000 would bring the matter to an end. But just when she seemed close to grasping hope, Guan Yunshuai kicked her back into despair at the final moment. Why are you doing this to me?" Xiao Mei gritted her teeth and asked. Guan Yunshuai dropped his smile and sneered viciously. "There's no why. Let me tell you, if I can't have something, I'll destroy it myself. Since you rejected me, I'll ruin you completely." Xiao Mei could hardly believe her ears. She spat out hatefully. "You're absolutely deranged." Guan Yunshuai sneered contemptuously. "Say whatever you want. One thing is certain, without 30,000 in compensation, the company will never revoke the industry notice." Xiao Mei trembled with rage, struggling hard to calm herself before speaking coldly. "Then let me confirm. Is it true that if I pay 30,000, you will indeed revoke the notice?" Guan Yunshuai nodded. "Exactly. I give you my guarantee." Chapter 119. Who are you to him? Fine. Remember what you said today. Xiao Mei took a deep breath and turned away from the HR department. As Guan Yunshuai watched Xiao Mei's retreating figure, he sneered. "We'll see. One day, you'll come crying on your knees begging me to let you off." After returning home, Xiao Mei stuffed the remaining 300,000 yuan into her bag and quickly headed back to the company. Neither the HR manager nor Guan Yunshuai expected her to return so soon. Without saying a word, Xiao Mei dumped all the money from her bag onto the table. Facing the pile of cash before him, Guan Yunshuai was left speechless. How is this possible? How could Xiao Mei have raised so much money in such a short time? This morning, HR had just notified her. She immediately came back with 200,000. And now, just an hour after Guan Yunshuai demanded an additional 300,000 as compensation, she'd already brought the money. Her speed left Guan Yunshuai wondering. Had she prepared the money beforehand? But that didn't make sense. The extra 300,000 penalty was his last-minute demand. She couldn't have foreseen it. While Guan Yunshuai stood stunned, Xiao Mei calmly said, "I've fully compensated you. I hope you'll keep your promise and withdraw the industry-wide notification against me. Also, I'd like you to give me a receipt. I need to keep a record." Guan Yunshuai finally snapped out of his shock. At this point, he no longer had any grounds to make things difficult for her. He'd expected her to come back in tears, pleading for forgiveness, but reality had slapped him hard across the face. He snorted coldly, instructing the HR manager to revoke the industry notice and asking finance to issue a receipt confirming the full payment of 500,000 yuan. Xiao Mei finally got what she wanted. She exhaled deeply, a weight lifted from her shoulders. After leaving Shifei Industries, she stretched her arms wide. She wouldn't have to switch careers and start over. That was truly a relief. She'd been terrified that at her age, she might end up standing behind a retail counter again. After all, she held a bachelor's degree, an achievement considered quite prestigious these days. For a college graduate to be working behind a shop counter, people would laugh themselves to death if they found out. And she owed this breakthrough entirely to Feng Shui. Not only had he lent her 500,000 yuan, but he'd also seen through Guan Yunshui's twisted psychology. With the Shifei matter resolved, Xiaomei felt her luck beginning to turn. Soon, she landed a new job with a salary and benefits far better than her previous position at Shifei. Overjoyed, she didn't forget Feng Shui's kindness and decided to call him, hoping to invite him out for a meal. To her surprise, however, the person who answered wasn't Feng Shui, but a young woman. "Hello, who is this?" the young woman asked. Xiaomei started to identify herself, but suddenly stopped mid-sentence. Instead, she asked, "Who are you? Why do you have his phone? You call me, then ask who I am? Do you even have business here? If not, I'm hanging up." The woman sounded impatient. "Wait." Xiaomei lightly bit her lip. "Let Feng Shui take the phone. It's none of your business who I am. You're being completely unreasonable, aren't you?" The young woman's tone grew irritated. Before Xiaomei could respond, she heard Feng Shui's voice approaching. "Xiaoyi, who's calling? Why are you arguing with them?" "Some random woman. I asked who she was, but she refused to say. All she insists on is talking to you." "All right, go do your work. Hand me the phone." Feng Shui took the phone and asked, "Hello, who is this?" "Feng Shui, it's me, Xiaomei." By now, she'd forgotten why she'd called, and instead blurted out, "Who was that woman just now? Why was she so rude?" "Her name is Yanqi. She works under me," Feng Shui replied. "Did you need something?" Only then did Xiaomei remember. She wanted to invite him to dinner. "Oh right, I've already found a new job, with good pay and conditions. I want to express my gratitude, so I'd like to treat you to a meal." Before she could finish, Yanqi's voice chimed in again. "Boss, please sign this document." A few seconds later, Feng Shui asked, "Sorry, what were you saying?" "I said, I'd like to invite you." Before she could continue, Yanqi interrupted once more. "Boss, Director Ding wants you in the meeting." "Got it," Feng Shui responded, then turned back to Xiaomei. "Sorry, I'm really busy right now. Can we talk later tonight?" With that, he hung up. Helpless, Xiaomei had no choice but to set aside the dinner plans for now. Even though the call had ended, Xiaomei could still hear Yanqi's words and tone ringing in her ears. It made her deeply uncomfortable. Who exactly was that young woman named Yanqi? What gave her the right to answer Feng Shui's phone? And why had she been so sharp? Almost as if she held some hostility toward her. Could it be that this woman had special feelings for Feng Shui? Very likely. The moment the thought occurred to her, Xiaomei felt even more annoyed. She had to admit, her imagination really knew no bounds. Based on just a few brief exchanges, she'd conjured up such an elaborate scenario. If Feng Shui ever found out, he'd probably be completely stunned. But at the moment, he didn't have time to deal with such things, because today, he was genuinely busy. Chendaio's real estate project was nearing completion, which meant Feng Shui needed to gradually step back from his involvement with the agricultural products company. As a major shareholder, he couldn't simply walk away overnight. It required a process. At the same time, he planned to transfer his shares, but he couldn't sell them all at once. That would cause the stock price to plummet. The most suitable person to take over his shares was Ding Yi. However, Ding Yi was a shrewd man, and getting him to buy all 12% of Feng Shui's stake might prove difficult. Ding Yi cared only about power, and possessing absolute control was enough for him. Currently, Feng Shui, Ding Yi, and Long Wanqing each held 12% of the company's shares. As long as Ding Yi secured 7% of Feng Shui's shares, he would gain complete control of the company. Even if Long Wanqing acquired every remaining share, she still wouldn't be able to challenge his authority. Therefore, there was no need for Ding Yi to absorb all of Feng Shui's equity. Moreover, Feng Shui's withdrawal from the agricultural products company had to happen quietly, without raising any suspicion beforehand. If Ding Yi or the others caught wind of his intentions and plans, he would immediately be placed at a disadvantage. Not only would his shares be severely undervalued, but completely extricating himself from the company would likely become much harder. In addition, Feng Shui had to remain cautious around Long Wanqing. This woman was far too intelligent. She could detect even the subtlest of movements. He absolutely could not let her sense anything amiss. Chapter 120, Transferring Shares. The emergency shareholders meeting was called primarily because Hu Yurin and Qian Lai had made mistakes in the company's operations. Although no serious consequences had arisen, Feng Shui insisted on strict disciplinary action. First, he ordered Hu Yurin and Qian Lai to write self-criticisms in front of everyone. Then, he proposed stripping both of them of their rights to attend shareholder meetings. Upon learning that Feng Shui intended to remove him from the shareholders meeting, Hu Yurin slammed the table in fury. "Feng Shui, even if I have no merits in this company, at least I've put in years of hard work. Qian Lai and I merely made small mistakes. Yet you show us no face by forcing us to publicly confess in front of everyone. And now you actually want to kick us out of the shareholders meeting. Tell me, are you trying to establish a dictatorship? If that's what you want, go after Director Ding and the others. Why pick on us? Do you still consider us friends?" Feng Shui replied calmly. "Public matters are public, personal feelings are private. Don't mix the two. And if I didn't consider you friends, I'd have kicked you out of the entire company, not just the shareholders meeting." Qian Lai also stood up angrily. "Feng Shui, we've long seen through your plan to seize control of the company. By driving us away, aren't you clearly aiming for our shares? Fine, I'll give you exactly what you want. Take them all. I don't want my shares anymore." With those words, he stormed out of the conference room in rage. Hu Yurin let out an angry snort and followed Qian Lai outside. The entire meeting room fell into an oppressive silence. as nobody expected things to escalate so dramatically between Feng Shuo and the two others. Ding Yi remained silent throughout, but his gaze toward Feng Shuo carried deep wariness. Could it be true, as Hu Yurin and Qian Lai claimed, that Feng Shuo wanted absolute control, complete dominance over the company? If so, then Ding Yi would likely be next on his list. Fine, Feng Shuo said coolly. We don't need to worry about them. It's better they left on their own. Saves me the trouble of organizing a vote. But now that they're gone, we're short on attendees for the shareholders meeting. So I propose readmitting Fei Ping to the meeting. Fei Ping never expected that one day he'd return to the shareholders meeting. He certainly never imagined that Hu Yurin and Qian Lai would end up being kicked out instead. This proposal only heightened Ding Yi's suspicion toward Feng Shuo. After the meeting ended, Ding Yi deliberately stopped Feng Shuo. Xiaofeng, come to my office for a moment. Feng Shuo followed Ding Yi to his office and sat down across from him. Xiaofeng, we've worked together long enough. No need for formalities or beating around the bush. Let me ask you straight. What exactly are you planning? Ding Yi asked, staring straight at him. Feng Shuo smiled faintly. Nothing much, really. You know how I am. Boss Ding, I'm a pure businessman. Anyone whose actions conflict with my business philosophy becomes an obstacle to me. Hu Yurin and Qian Lai. Their ways of doing things differ too much from mine. I need to eliminate them before they become stumbling blocks later. Ding Yi's expression darkened. Is that so? What about me then? Will I become one of your stumbling blocks in the future? Let me tell you, Feng Shuo, don't think your little schemes are invisible. I won't allow you to play underhanded games behind our backs. Feng Shuo stood up and said coldly, Boss Ding, you're outdated. This is the young generation's world now. It's time for you to step down and hand your position over to me. Ding Yi roared in anger. So you've finally shown your true colors. Let me tell you this, you're still 10 years too early to try pulling off a one-man rule. Just wait and see. I'll make sure you're silenced for good. The very next morning, Ding Yi urgently summoned everyone for another shareholders meeting. This time, every shareholder attended, including Hu Yurin and Qian Lai. Ding Yi formally proposed removing Feng Shuo from all positions and stripping him of his right to attend shareholder meetings. The proposal sounded nearly unbelievable, yet the outcome proved surprising. Apart from Feng Shuo himself voting against it, Long Wanqing chose to abstain, while Hu Yurin and Qian Lai sided with Ding Yi and voted in favor. Thus, Feng Shuo was rightfully expelled from the shareholders meeting, stripped of all influence. He slowly rose from his seat, scanning the room with a quiet gaze, then turned and walked out of the meeting hall. 2 days later, Fei Ping rushed into Ding Yi's office in a panic, shouting, Boss Ding, big news. Something huge has happened. Ding Yi stiffened. What is it? Director Feng secretly met with Long Wanqing. He wants to transfer his shares. Fei Ping exclaimed. What? Ding Yi slammed the table. What does he think he's doing? If he can't control the company, he'd rather not let me control it either? How can we let Long Wanqing, an outsider, take over the company? What is she capable of? Fei Ping said grimly. Director Ding, we can't let them get their way. If Feng Shuo transfers all his shares to Long Wanqing, there'll be no hope left for us. Ding Yi pondered for a moment and then said, Go bring Feng Shuo here immediately. I need to talk to him. 10 minutes later, Feng Shuo arrived at Ding Yi's office and sat down in the same seat as last time. Ding Yi, now wearing a warm and friendly expression instead of his previous gloom, said, Xiaofeng, I know you're upset about my proposal, but you have to understand, it was all for the sake of the company. Feng Shuo shrugged. Yes, I understand. What I did was also for the company. Ding Yi chuckled. I heard you've been discussing share transfer with Long Wanqing. Feng Shuo looked helpless. I've already been kicked out of the shareholders meeting, and Hu Yurin and Qian Lai have turned against me. Now, inside the company, I'm completely isolated. If nothing unexpected happens, I probably won't ever return to the shareholders meeting. Without any say in the company anymore, staying here has no meaning. Rather than drag this on, I'd prefer to leave with some dignity. I'll transfer all my shares and exit the company voluntarily. That way, at least I keep my self-respect. Ding Yi cleared his throat dryly. Xiaofeng, I want to discuss something with you. Since you've already decided to leave and transfer your shares, why don't you just give them to me? Feng Shuo was stunned. To you? Yes. Think about it. Long Wanqing is just an outsider. Aside from capital operations, she knows nothing about running a company. If you hand your shares to her, the company will inevitably fall into the hands of someone inexperienced. But me? I've spent decades building this company. When it comes to markets, customers, and products, I'm an absolute expert. Compared to Long Wanqing, I'm far more qualified to manage the company. You've poured a lot of effort into this agricultural products company too. I believe you wouldn't want to see it collapse. So I'm asking you, transfer your shares to me. That way, the company still has a future and room for long-term development. Chapter 121, Come to the School. Are you going to sell your shares to me? Feng Shuo narrowed his eyes. Ding Yi smiled and said, Don't worry about the price. I guarantee I won't let you take a loss. Feng Shuo sneered. Director Ding, you've really calculated everything perfectly, haven't you? You kick me out of the shareholders meeting, isolate me completely, wait until I'm disillusioned and ready to leave, and then come to buy my shares. Ding Yi sighed. Xiaofeng, you're still young. There are many things you don't understand. Running a company is like a royal court struggle. Fighting for power and interests is completely normal. Wherever there are people, there's society. Don't think we're just a small company. The structure here is almost identical to any imperial dynasty throughout history. You and I have no deep hatred. We simply stand on opposite sides. After all, you've already decided not to stay in the company. So who ends up in control shouldn't make much difference to you anymore. I promise you, if you sell me all your shares, I'll pay you 20% above market value. Feng Shuo leaned back against his chair and fell into deep thought. He murmured softly, 20% premium, that's not low at all. Ding Yi's eyes lit up instantly. Exactly. That's right. It's not low, really not low. Feng Shuo shrugged. But if I offer that same price to Long Wanqing, she'd certainly be willing to buy too. To me, selling to you or to her makes no difference. A muscle twitched on Ding Yi's face. Feng Shuo actually dared to negotiate, demanding a 20% higher price, and still wasn't satisfied. Still, eager to acquire all of Feng Shuo's shares, Ding Yi forced himself to remain patient. 30%. I'll increase it by 30%. Xiao Feng, we've worked together all this time. Even if we don't have deep personal ties, surely some camaraderie exists among colleagues. Feng Shuo sighed deeply, as though making an excruciating decision. Then he nodded slowly. All right, fine, I accept. A 30% premium. Overjoyed, Ding Yi thanked him repeatedly. He immediately called his secretary and drew up the share transfer agreement on the spot. Then he instructed finance to transfer every single cent of the payment into Feng Shuo's account without delay. With the sale of his equity and prior dividends, Feng Shuo now suddenly had over 10 million yuan in his account. 10 million, a sum unimaginable to ordinary people. Consider that many small-scale companies in Jiangzhou City don't even have total assets reaching 10 million yuan. Even Guan Yunshui, despite having tens of millions in personal assets, includes fixed corporate assets and intangible assets in that figure. His actual bank balance might not be anywhere near that amount. After confirming the funds had arrived, Feng Shuo flashed a faint smile and extended his right hand. Director Ding, I won't say much more. I wish you great success in the future. Until we meet again, somewhere down the road. Ding Yi shook his hand sincerely. Xiao Feng, if it were possible, I really wouldn't want you to leave. You brought tremendous change to this company, something everyone has seen with their own eyes. But it's a pity. Talented individuals don't always get the chance to grow fully. This has always been the way since ancient times. I hope you climb even higher in the future. And if life gets tough out there, remember, you can always come back. I'll keep a senior executive position waiting for you. Feng Shuo chuckled lightly, stood up, and walked out of Ding Yi's office. Outside the Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company, Hu Renyu and Qian Lai were already waiting for him. The three exchanged knowing smiles before getting into the car together. Feng Shuo had gone through great lengths and elaborate schemes just to sell his shares at a high price, while keeping everything under wraps. He deliberately staged a bitter act with Hu Renyu and Qian Lai, leaking through them false rumors that he intended to seize full control of the company. Ding Yi, obsessed with power, couldn't tolerate anyone becoming dominant on their own. Naturally, he took action to pull Feng Shuo down from the center of power. Sure enough, he called a shareholders' meeting and voted to strip Feng Shuo of his right to attend future meetings. All of this unfolded exactly as Feng Shuo had planned, because only after being pushed away from the center of power could he have a legitimate reason to sell off his shares. And the rumor that he wanted to sell his shares to Long Wanqing? That was also intentionally spread. In reality, he hadn't mentioned it to Long Wanqing at all. Once Ding Yi heard the news, he rushed to grab the opportunity, buying up all of Feng Shuo's shares at a high price in one go. Old Hu, old Qian, Feng Shuo asked. Have you both handled your shares yet? Hu Renyu laughed heartily. Already taken care of. The moment Fei Ping heard that me and old Qian wanted to transfer our shares, he came running, offering top dollar to buy them. This trip to the Agricultural Products Company, going in and coming out, we didn't just earn huge dividends for nothing, but our share prices multiplied several times over compared to when we first bought in. Qian Lai nodded repeatedly, saying, to be honest, I never even dreamed I could make so much money. Brother Feng, what about if we invest in old Qian's real estate next? How much do you think we'll earn? Feng Shuo replied calmly, at least 10 times. What? Hu Renyu and Qian Lai nearly choked on their saliva upon hearing this. Each of them had invested several million yuan. If it multiplied tenfold, that would mean tens of millions in profit. Earning a tenfold return from just one real estate investment was simply unimaginable. Hu Renyu and Qian Lai were trembling slightly with excitement. Just a few more deals like this, and their net worth would easily surpass hundreds of millions. A fortune of over 100 million yuan. Not only would they stand out in Jiangzhou, but across the entire country, they'd rank among the elite. Yet Feng Shuo remained completely unfazed. A mere 100 million meant nothing to him. In his previous life, he had controlled assets worth tens of billions. Now, having been reborn with knowledge of future events, as long as he played his cards right, becoming the world's richest man wasn't an impossible dream. The Agricultural Products Company had kept him busy for a while. Now, with Chun Daio's property development still some time away from completion, he planned to use this downtime to rest, recharge, and prepare for the next phase of battles ahead. And then there was his daughter. He needed to spend more quality time with her. Guoguo was such a well-behaved girl. She never caused him any trouble, which allowed him to focus entirely on work. So he decided that during her upcoming holiday, he would take her out for a proper vacation. Just as this thought crossed his mind, his phone suddenly rang. He pulled it out and saw it was a call from Guoguo's homeroom teacher. School hadn't ended yet. Why was the teacher calling at this hour? Had something happened? He answered immediately. Hello, teacher. Is everything all right? Mr. Fong? This is Guoguo's teacher. Could you please come to the school now? Your daughter got into a fight and hit another student. The injured student's parents are demanding an explanation from the school. So please come quickly so we can discuss how to resolve this. Hearing this, Feng Shuo jolted upright in alarm. He responded hastily. Yes, of course. I'll be right there. After hanging up, He turned to Hu Rinyu and Qian Lai. Sorry, brothers. You'll have to take a taxi back. I need to go to the school right away. Chapter 122. Turning right into wrong. Hearing it was something from the school, Hu Yurin and Qian Lai quickly responded and hurriedly got off the car. Fang Shuo immediately stepped on the gas and sped toward the school. Arriving at the school gate, he explained the situation to the guard, who then pointed him in the direction of the principal's office. Fang Shuo went straight there. The first thing he saw was a young man pointing directly at Guogua's face and yelling, "Little bitch, you brat with a mother who gave birth to you, but never raised you. How dare you hit my son? Want me to throw you off this building?" Guogua looked miserable, fighting back tears without uttering a word. Beside the young man stood a chubby little boy, smirking triumphantly while shooting defiant glares at Guogua. This fat kid was none other than the one who constantly bullied Guogua. There was an obvious bruise on the boy's forehead, but no matter how Fang Shuo looked at it, it didn't seem like the result of being punched. The homeroom teacher and principal stood awkwardly to the side, too scared to speak up, clearly intimidated by the young man. Fang Shuo walked over, grabbed the young man by the collar, and yanked him sharply backward until he stumbled. Without even glancing back, Fang Shuo strode up to Guogua and asked, "Guogua, what exactly happened?" Seeing Fang Shuo, Guogua felt as if she had finally found her pillar of support. She burst into tears, threw her arms around his leg, and sobbed. "Daddy, Xiaohu said I'm a worthless brat nobody wants. He said you died from a terminal illness." I got so angry I argued back a little, and then he pushed me and told me to go die. Fang Shuo frowned, his expression darkening. "Then why did the teachers say you hit another student?" Sniffling, Guogua replied pitifully, "I didn't hit him. He tripped himself and banged his head on the corner of a desk." Fang Shuo narrowed his eyes, slowly turning his gaze toward the chubby boy. The young man nearly fell after being pulled and was now furious. He roared at Fang Shuo. "You little punk. How dare you grab me? Do you know who I am? I'll make sure you regret it, big time." Fang Shuo glanced at the man and couldn't help but sneer. What a narrow world indeed. This young man was none other than the guy from that night at Huangpin KTV, the one who had tried to harass Xiao Mei. And the man recognized Fang Shuo too. He gritted his teeth and snarled. "So it's you. No wonder such an ill-mannered daughter. Must be your doing." Fang Shuo ignored him and turned to the principal and teacher. "I've spoken with Guogua. She says she didn't hit anyone. Her classmate here simply tripped and banged his head on the table corner. Look at the bruise on his forehead. Anyone with common sense can tell this wasn't caused by a punch. It's clearly from impact. As educators, how can you jump to conclusions and accuse my daughter without investigating properly?" The homeroom teacher forced a weak smile. "Mr. Guogua's father, please stay calm. We mustn't just take a child's word. We have to respect the facts. I've talked to other students in the classroom, and they all confirmed Guogua was the one who hit him." Millie Beaufong let out a scoff. "Exactly. Your damn brat daughter hit my son. My boy doesn't lie. If he says she did it, then she did it. You? And we haven't even settled our old grudge yet. But now your daughter assaults mine? This won't end here. I'm demanding compensation, medical expenses, emotional distress, lost wages. 2 million total. Wait, scratch that. Make it 2 million. As soon as he finished speaking, both the teacher and the principal gasped. This guy really had nerve. It was just a bump on the head from a desk corner, and he was already demanding 2 million? Granted, families sending kids to private schools were generally wealthy, but 2 million was still a massive sum, not easily paid by just anyone. The teacher quickly interjected. "Mr. Mi Lifeng, we understand your feelings, but this amount is outrageous. Your child isn't seriously injured. Medical costs are reasonable, sure, but lost wages? How does that even apply? How? I took my son to the hospital for injury assessment. That took time away from work, didn't it?" Mi Lifeng rolled his eyes. The principal spoke up now. "Mr. Mi Lifeng, 2 million is far too high. I doubt Mr. Fong would agree to that. What if we discuss a more reasonable figure, something within acceptable limits?" Mi Lifeng shot him a fierce glare. "I said 2 million. That's final. Not a single cent less. Keep whining, and maybe you won't be principal anymore." The principal visibly trembled. He was clearly terrified of the man, and quickly fell silent. Fang Shuo noticed it too. Both the teacher and the principal were deeply afraid of Mi Lifeng, which was why they were flipping right and wrong and insisting that Guogua was the aggressor. Others might fear him, but Fang Shuo certainly didn't. No matter who this Mi Bluffing was or what connections he had, if he dared to bully his daughter, Fang Shuo would never allow it. Fang Shuo sneered coldly. 2 million, huh? Fine. I won't waste words with you. Let's call the police and settle this legally. If it comes down to it, we'll go through the judicial system. Then I'll countersue you for extortion and see how you handle that. But Mi Bluffing wasn't intimidated at all. Go ahead, file your case. Let's see if you can actually win. Kid, don't say I didn't warn you. Sometimes right and wrong aren't so clearly defined. Harsh reality will shatter your worldview completely. In the face of absolute power, there's no such thing as fairness or justice. Let me tell you, your fate is already sealed. You can't escape it. As soon as he finished speaking, another person suddenly rushed into the principal's office. The man strode straight toward Guogua and asked anxiously, "Little Guogua, are you okay? Are you hurt? Oh no, why are you crying? Who bullied you?" Fang Shuo looked closely and realized it was Long Wanqing. He couldn't help frowning and said, "What are you doing here?" The homeroom teacher raised her hand slightly. "It was Fang Guogua who asked me to call. Actually, my first call was to Miss Long here, but she didn't answer, so I called you instead." Long Wanqing comforted Guogua for a moment, then ignored Fang Shuo completely, turning instead to glare icily at Mi Bluffing. Mi Bluffing felt a chilling murderous intent that made every pore on his body stand on end. Instinctively, he glanced at Long Wanqing, but immediately afterward wore an expression of disdain and contempt. He assumed Long Wanqing was Feng Shua's wife, so he didn't take her seriously at all. Just as he was about to speak more threats, another person entered the principal's office. Mi Buofeng's attention was naturally drawn toward the newcomer. Upon seeing who it was, he froze completely. He quickly straightened his clothes, hurried forward, and bowed respectfully. Chairman Long, hello? I never expected to meet you here. It's truly an honor of a lifetime. Feng Shua was both exasperated and amused. Long Wanqing showing up was one thing, but now even Long Tianhai had come. Long Tianhai looked at Mi Buofeng coldly. Who are you? I'm Mi Buofeng from Maoxing Industries. Our company has business collaborations with yours. You remember, don't you? Chapter 123. The atmosphere turns heavy. Long Tianhai said disdainfully. No impression. I meet so many people every day. It's impossible to remember them all. Do you have something important? If not, step aside. I'm busy. Mi Buofeng immediately scurried obediently to the side. This man was their company's biggest benefactor. Offending Long Tianhai would not only ruin the company, but probably end his career in Jiangzhou forever. Long Tianhai was a legendary figure in Jiangzhou. Both the principal and homeroom teacher had seen him on television before. This was arguably the most prominent person their school had ever encountered. The principal stepped forward nervously, speaking with utmost deference. Mr. Chairman Long, I had no idea you'd grace us with your presence. I failed to welcome you properly. Please forgive me. Forgive me. We didn't know you'd come personally, Mr. Chairman Long. Why didn't you inform us ahead of time? I could have organized teachers and students to line up at the gate to welcome you. Long Tianhai replied coldly. Nothing major. There's no need to disturb the faculty and students. I heard my granddaughter got into some trouble at school, so I came to see for myself. At those words, the principal froze completely. Long Tianhai's granddaughter? Here at their school? How is that possible? He, as principal, hadn't been informed at all. If it were truly Long Tianhai's granddaughter attending their school, the Municipal Education Bureau would have contacted him personally. That kind of news wouldn't go unnoticed. Besides, while his private elementary school wasn't affordable for ordinary families, it still wasn't on the level suitable for someone like Long Tianhai. His institution simply didn't have the standing to admit the granddaughter of such a powerful figure. As principal, he knew exactly where his school stood. After a long pause, he stammered, Mr. Chairman Long, could there be some mistake? Your granddaughter attends our school? Long Tianhai nodded, then pointed at Guagua. She's my granddaughter. What? Both the principal and the homeroom teacher gasped in shock. Standing nearby, Mi Buofeng turned pale, his eyes widening in disbelief. Long Tianhai frowned and asked gravely, Principal, I've heard that my granddaughter assaulted someone. I want to know exactly what happened. Explain it to me. If she truly did wrong, then compensation will be made and apologies offered. I, Long Tianhai, never shield my own. But if the truth is different from what you claim, then I demand an explanation from all of you. Who was Long Tianhai? After decades dominating the business world, his eyes could see through lies at a glance. Upon arriving just now, he had taken one quick look and already understood the whole situation. Seeing Guogua's tearful, pained expression, his heart nearly shattered. He was furious. He would not let this go easily, not against the principal, nor against anyone who had wronged his granddaughter. Hearing Long Tianhai's words, the principal felt as though struck by lightning. Though he held the title of principal, before Long Tianhai he was merely an ant, easily crushed underfoot. He dared not lie, nor favor anyone. He could only recount the entire incident exactly as it had occurred. And indeed, it was almost exactly as Guagua had described. She hadn't hit anyone. Mi Xiaohu had tripped accidentally and hit his head on the edge of a table. Truthfully, the principal also felt somewhat aggrieved. You have Long Tianhai's granddaughter here. Why didn't you tell me beforehand? He would have assigned teachers to guard her personally if needed. His earlier support of Mi Buofeng and Mi Xiaohu stemmed entirely from Mi Buofeng's significant influence, a wealthy and powerful business owner whom the principal couldn't afford to offend. Originally, he just wanted Feng Shua to apologize and offer some compensation to smooth things over. But he'd never dreamed that Long Tianhai himself would get involved. Moments ago, he had twisted facts to support Mi Buofeng. Now, he swallowed bitter silence with no way to explain. He even sensed that his days as principal might be numbered. The homeroom teacher shrank into a corner, trembling. As a mere teacher, she didn't even dare open her mouth. After hearing the principal's account, Long Tianhai's gaze grew increasingly icy. He turned his piercing eyes toward Mi Buofeng, who suddenly felt as if his throat had been clamped shut, struggling even to breathe. In the principal's office, the atmosphere turned oppressively heavy. No one dared speak. Not a single sound broke the silence. After a long moment, Long Tianhai reigned in his aura, his expression returning to calm. He waved a hand at the principal and said coolly, Principal, as an educator, you should uphold fairness and justice. If even you are so swayed by power and status, how can you possibly raise outstanding students? I won't use my status to pressure you, but I do hope you handle this matter fairly. From now on, I don't want to see anything like this happen again. Do you understand? The principal wiped the cold sweat beading on his forehead, nodding frantically like a chicken pecking at rice. Yes, I understand. I fully understand. Long Tianhai nodded, then fixed his gaze on Mi Buofeng's face. You're Mi Buofeng from Maoxing Industries? Mi Buofeng hurriedly replied. Yes, that's me. Long Tianhai sneered coldly. Good. Very good. He took out his phone and dialed a number. Notify the business department. Halt all cooperation with Maoxing Industries immediately. At the same time, add this company to Longhai Group's blacklist. No one in the company is to collaborate with them from now on. Anyone who violates this order will be fired. Hearing Long Tianhai's words, Mi Bluffing nearly collapsed to the ground. With a pitiful expression, he cried, Chairman Long, I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please, I beg you, show mercy. I'll have my son kowtow and apologize to your granddaughter. No, I'll kowtow myself. Please spare me this once. If you stop cooperating with our company, then our company is finished. Long Tianhai gave him a cold, indifferent look. And what of it? Having said that, he turned to Long Wanqing. I have matters to attend to at my company. I'll leave now. The rest is up to you. Long Wanqing nodded. All right, I understand. Long Tianhai then softened his expression, casting a deeply affectionate look at Guogua before striding out of the principal's office. Only after Long Tianhai had left did the principal finally let out a long sigh of relief. He quickly walked over to Feng Shuo and bowed deeply. Mr. Feng Shuo, I'm truly sorry. Earlier, I handled the matter incorrectly. Please forgive me. But I assure you, I will handle this fairly and justly. After speaking, he turned to the homeroom teacher. Go issue an announcement. Mi Xiaohu has long been bullying classmates, damaging class unity, and repeatedly refusing to reform. Furthermore, his academic performance is extremely poor and his attitude completely unacceptable. After deliberation by the school committee, his enrollment is hereby terminated. The homeroom teacher didn't dare utter a single word of objection. She nodded quickly and fled the principal's office like she was running for her life. Chapter 124, Just Ordinary Friends. The principal now stood much straighter, coldly addressing Mi Bluffing. Mr. Mi, do you have any objections to my decision? Mi Bluffing forced a smile so unconvincing it looked worse than crying. No, none at all. Your ruling is very fair. I accept it. The principal then turned to Guogua. Student Feng Guogua, do you have anything else to add? Guogua glanced at Xiaohu, then shook her head. Nothing more. The principal gave a gentle smile and said kindly. All right then, since there's nothing further, why don't you return to class now? It wouldn't be good if your studies were disrupted. Guogua looked at Feng Shuo, and after seeing her father nod in approval, she stepped out of the principal's office. Long Wanqing quickly said, I'll walk you back to the classroom. And with that, she followed Guogua out. Feng Shuo paused for thought. He felt it necessary to say a few words to the principal. He didn't want the school treating Guogua differently, just because of Long Tianhai's influence. He said to the principal, Sir, Guogua is just an ordinary student. I hope you won't treat her differently because of external factors. If I find out you're giving her special favors or covering up her mistakes, then I'm sorry. We'll transfer schools immediately. The principal certainly didn't want Guogua to leave. Having Long Tianhai's granddaughter enrolled in his school was an immense honor, not only for him personally, but also for the school's reputation. He nodded quickly. Mr. Feng, please rest assured. As educators, we never allow outside factors to bias our treatment of students. No matter what her family background may be, within these walls, Feng Guogua has only one identity, student. Hearing these words, Feng Shuo could barely suppress a laugh. Earlier, the man had been acting completely different. Out of fear of Mi Bluffing's power and connections, he'd actually planned to make Feng Shuo apologize and pay compensation. That wasn't fairness or justice by any stretch. But once Long Tianhai arrived, the principal's entire attitude flipped, so did his words. So Feng Shuo didn't believe for a second that the principal would truly remain impartial. Still, perhaps this was better. At least now no one would dare bully Guogua at school. With everything settled, Feng Shuo saw no reason to linger. He bid the principal farewell and turned to leave. Just as he stepped out of the school gate, he heard someone call from behind. Mr. Feng. Mr. Feng Shuo, please wait. Feng Shuo stopped and turned around. There came Mi Bluffing, rushing toward him with his son in tow. When they reached him, Mi Bluffing took a moment to catch his breath, then spoke in a flattering tone. Mr. Feng, before there was some misunderstanding between us, please forgive the small-mindedness of someone like me. Feng Shuo replied calmly. Say what you mean. No need to beat around the bush. Mi Bluffing wore a wide, ingratiating smile. Here's the thing. I've spoiled my son too much. He doesn't know better, and he offended your daughter. I'll have him personally apologize to her right now. Besides, making you come all this way troubles me deeply. I'll cover all your mental distress fees, lost wages, everything. Altogether, I should probably compensate you 2 million, wouldn't you say? As he spoke, he pulled out his checkbook, scribbled rapidly, and handed over a 2 million yuan cashier's check to Feng Shuo. Feng Shuo glanced at the check, but made no move to take it. Mi Bluffing could change faces faster than flipping a page. Only moments ago, he'd been demanding 2 million from Feng Shuo, yet now he was voluntarily offering the same amount. But Feng Shuo understood perfectly well what was going on. Mi Bluffing knew Long Tianhai would never acknowledge him again, so he was trying a roundabout approach, bribing Feng Shuo to act as mediator. The 2 million might be labeled compensation, but in truth, it was a bribe and payment for effort. Yet was Feng Shuo really someone who could be bought so easily? He said coolly, keep your money. I don't want it. I only have one thing to tell you. Evil deeds multiply until they destroy the doer. Like father, like son. The fate you faced today was inevitable. Even if this incident with Guogua hadn't happened, you'd have crashed eventually over something else. In life, it's better to commit fewer wrongs. Having spoken, Feng Shuo walked away without looking back, leaving Mi Bluffing standing there in stunned silence. Without Long Hai Group as his golden patron, the downfall of Mi Bluffing's company was only natural. Still, his fate illustrated a profound truth. When running a business, one should strive to diversify clients and never place all hopes on a single major customer. Should that one client suffer any unexpected setback, the entire company would face devastating consequences. One's destiny should be held in one's own hands, not placed in the mercy of others. Feng Shuo opened the car door and got in. Just as he was about to start the engine, the passenger side door suddenly swung open, and Long Wanqing quickly climbed in. You didn't drive your own car? Feng Shuo asked. Long Wanqing scowled, speaking coldly. I need an explanation from you. What kind of explanation? About Guogua? Actually, I should be asking you. When she had trouble at school, why did she come to you first instead of me, her father? Feng Shuo shot back. Long Wanqing frowned. That's not what I'm talking about. About the agricultural products company. Don't you owe me an explanation? Feng Shuo shrugged. What do you want me to explain? You sold all your shares to Ding Yi without even telling me. Hu Yuren and Qian Lai also transferred their shares entirely to Fei Ping. I originally thought you'd fallen out, but seeing how perfectly synchronized your moves were, I realized you hadn't broken up at all. You staged the entire thing. You staged it because you wanted to exit Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company. But to prevent Ding Yi from taking advantage and driving down the price, you put on this performance. Ding Yi, fearing you'd transfer your shares to me, ended up paying a high price to buy them from you. She had to admit, Long Wanqing was indeed very intelligent, with extremely sharp reasoning skills. Knowing only the outcome, she could deduce every process and detail behind it. Still, even if she understood everything now, it was already too late. Feng Shuo had already unloaded his shares. Feng Shuo nodded, admitting it. Yes, you're absolutely right. Since you've already figured it out, why come looking for an explanation from me? Long Wanqing snapped angrily. Aren't we friends? Aren't we on the same side? If you wanted to leave the company, why didn't you tell me? Shouldn't we stand together, moving forward or retreating as one? Feng Shuo chuckled bitterly. Miss Long, I don't think we're quite at that level of relationship, are we? Old Hu and Old Qian are my friends, true comrades in arms. It's with them I should move forward and retreat. As for you, we're barely more than ordinary friends, aren't we? Hearing this, Long Wanqing's expression instantly changed. After a brief pause, she gave a self-mocking smile. Right, you're correct. We're just ordinary friends. With that, she pushed open the door and stepped out of the car. Chapter 125, On-Site Inspection. Watching Long Wanqing's retreating figure, Feng Shuo realized he might have spoken too harshly. After all, she had been kind to Guogua, and the two of them had even pretended to be a couple in front of Long Tianhai. So much so that Long Tianhai mistakenly believed they already had a child together. So in terms of closeness, Long Wanqing was more than just an ordinary friend. Even if they weren't as close as Hu Yuran and Qian Lai, at the very least, they could be considered good friends. Yet because Long Wanqing was so exceptionally talented and intelligent, Feng Shuo instinctively kept his guard up around her, making it difficult for him to truly open up. After Long Wanqing left, Feng Shuo murmured to himself, did I hurt her feelings? Maybe I should find a chance to apologize. Having made up his mind, he started the engine and drove away. Although Chun Daio's property project wasn't finished yet, and even after completion it would take time to maximize returns, Feng Shuo knew that if he wanted to establish an agricultural base, he had to start preparing now. Starting an agricultural base sounded simple, but in reality, it was extremely complicated. Even with all channels secured, it would still take 2 or 3 years of preparation before anything could truly get off the ground. And right now, he hadn't even taken the first step. If he didn't act quickly, he'd end up waiting far too long. Feng Shuo refused to waste any time. Time was the most expensive cost of all. Many entrepreneurs overlooked the cost of time, but Feng Shuo understood clearly. Financial losses could be recovered, but once time was lost, it could never be regained. Time was precious, and in any business venture, seizing the initiative was paramount. Hesitating and delaying only meant missing golden opportunities while watching others profit. Thus, if he was going to build an agricultural base, preparation must begin immediately. The most fundamental requirement for building such a base was choosing the right location. Site selection was a science. If done well, everything that followed would be twice as effective. If done poorly, not only would profits fail to be maximized, but both time and effort would be wasted. As for where to build the base, Feng Shuo had actually already made up his mind. In the future, Jiangzhou would grow into a massive metropolis, its urban area expanding repeatedly. Areas currently on the outskirts would eventually be incorporated into city planning and become part of the urban core. Therefore, these areas were unsuitable for establishing an agricultural base. By the time the base was finally built, it might face demolition due to urban redevelopment, rendering all effort useless and forcing him to start over. The ideal location lay in the border regions between Jiangzhou and other cities. This land still belonged to Jiangzhou's jurisdiction, but since it was near other municipalities, city planners wouldn't prioritize it even during expansion. Additionally, this area featured a major highway, a wide thoroughfare capable of accommodating 8 lanes of traffic side by side, serving as a key route in and out of Jiangzhou. Building the base near this highway would solve transportation issues from the outset. Feng Shuo had previously studied the boundary areas of Jiangzhou and identified one spot he considered perfect. It was remote, close to the highway, largely undeveloped, and rich in natural resources. Building an agricultural base here was simply ideal. In his previous life, investors had recognized the potential of this border region and established large-scale agricultural projects here. Feng Shuo was someone who acted immediately upon deciding, so he called Yanqi right away and asked her to accompany him to the Jiangzhou border for an on-site inspection to determine whether the place was truly suitable. Before leaving the agricultural products company, Feng Shuo gave Yanqi a portion of the money he earned from selling his shares. It was rightfully hers. Without her assistance, the performance he and Hu Yuran put on wouldn't have been nearly as convincing. The amount far exceeded several years of her salary, making her ecstatic and glad she had made the right decision. Had she stayed at Mingrue, she couldn't imagine when, or if, she'd ever earned so much. With this money as security, she could now calmly await Feng Shua's next move. Yi Anqi got into Feng Shua's car and placed a large backpack on the back seat. Feng Shua looked surprised. Why did you bring such a big bag? Yi Anqi smiled. I packed long-sleeved shirts, long pants, hats, towels, insect repellent, and sunscreen. Boss, you probably haven't been to places like this. They're absolutely necessary. Feng Shua nodded, a faint smile appearing. It seemed bringing Yi Anqi along was indeed a wise decision. Her attention to detail could, to some extent, compensate for Feng Shua's oversights. Had he brought Hu Yuran and Qian Lai instead, their carefree natures would have rendered them utterly unhelpful. The drive from the city center to the Jiangzhou border took about 2.5 hours. Worried that Feng Shua might grow fatigued, halfway through the journey, Yi Anqi volunteered to take over driving. Following the map, Feng Shua and Yi Anqi arrived at a small village less than 10 kilometers from the highway leading out of the city. Due to its remote location, the village seemed somewhat disconnected from the modern city. The people here dressed simply, and the houses were mostly made of wood, appearing rather modest. After walking around the village, they learned that most residents made their living by farming on the mountain, achieving basic self-sufficiency. Apart from the small convenience store in the village, they rarely interacted with the outside world. Under the guidance of the village chief, Feng Shua went up the mountain for an on-site inspection. There were large tracts of forest on the mountain. Near the village, trees had been cleared away by human hands, leaving vast stretches of farmland. The variety of crops grown here was limited, consisting mainly of staple foods such as rice, soybeans, and corn, with only occasional plots used for vegetables. In addition to crops, there was some livestock breeding in the village. However, there were very few and among dozens of households, only 1 or 2 families raised animals. The village chief was a simple-hearted elder. As he led Feng Shua and Yi Anqi around, he recounted the origin and history of the village. Our village is mostly inhabited by people with the surname Liang. During the Warring States period, a noble family with the Liang surname was exiled here and eventually settled down. At its peak, this village had over 3,000 households and was renowned far and wide as a large settlement. Alas, times changed, dynasties rose and fell, and many villagers who left never returned. Today, we're left with fewer than 50 households. Feng Shua asked, Chief, let me ask you something. If you were offered to relocate from this village to a better environment, would the villagers be willing? The chief shook his head and chuckled. We've lived here generation after generation. Many people have never left since birth. Suddenly asking them to move away, I'm afraid none of them would agree. Besides, the ancestral graves of many families are located right here. They'd absolutely refuse to relocate. Feng Shua nodded repeatedly, carefully noting the chief's words. It seemed that unless these villagers could be properly resettled, establishing the agricultural base might prove difficult. Yet Feng Shua wasn't particularly concerned about this. He had his own solution. Chapter 126, perfectly suitable. Feng Shua smiled at the village chief and said, I've basically understood your village's situation. Let's leave it at that for today. I'll come back and visit again when I have time. With those words, he stood up, ready to leave with Yi Anqi. Seeing him off, the village chief escorted them both to the edge of the village. Just before parting, he couldn't help but ask, Mr. Feng, you made a special trip all the way to our remote and impoverished village. Does that mean you're planning to invest here? Feng Shua asked, Why do you think so? The old chief chuckled. Though I'm just an old man, I've seen a thing or two. This place is isolated and poor. You wouldn't have come all the way from the city just for sightseeing, would you? And earlier, you asked me to show you around the village. That must have been an inspection tour, right? To be honest, quite a few people have visited us before, hoping to invest in our village. Unfortunately, we never had much to offer. The place is small, underdeveloped. It simply wasn't worth the investment. So if you're also thinking about investing, I suggest you give up on that idea early. Most villagers are elderly, stubborn, and set in their ways. Convincing them to relocate would be nearly impossible. Feng Shua smiled and said, Chief, I was merely paying a visit. As for investment, that's still far from certain, but I appreciate your advice, and I'll keep what you said in mind. He bid farewell to the chief and walked away with Yi Anqi. After they left, several middle-aged men approached the chief and asked, Chief, what were they here for? Another investor. The chief nodded. Most likely. They asked detailed questions about the village. I'd say they're probably considering investment. Chief, our ancestors have lived here for generations. Our roots are here. Please don't agree to let outsiders invest. None of us want to move. Even if we die, we'll die right here. Others chimed in. The chief glanced around at the crowd. Don't worry. I've already made our position clear. I believe they'll drop the idea. And even if they aren't fully discouraged, after a couple more visits, they'll give up anyway. Hearing this, the villagers finally relaxed and smiled. They had lived here generation after generation, strictly abiding by ancestral rules that forbade leaving the village easily. No matter how poor or backward life became, they chose to stay. Meanwhile, Feng Shua drove back toward the city. Midway through the journey, he suddenly asked, Xiao Yezi, do you think this mountain village is worth investing in? Yi Anqi thought for a moment and shook her head. Not worth it, for 2 reasons. First, this village is truly too ordinary, nothing special. The crops are just common staples and vegetables. Second, the people are too conservative and stubborn. I heard they followed an ancestral rule since ancient times. Every generation must remain in the village and never leave. So any attempt to invest here would face huge obstacles. Fang Shuo nodded in deep agreement. Exactly. Your analysis is excellent and very thorough. You even found out about their ancestral rule, which shows real attention to detail. However, what you see as difficulties, I actually see as advantages. Precisely what makes this village promising. Yanchi looked puzzled. I don't understand. You think their crops are too ordinary, right? But isn't that exactly what we eat every day? Rice, corn, beans. These are all essential parts of daily life. Just now, I observed their crops closely. They're growing extremely well. If cultivated on a large scale, the output could be enormous. All the basic elements of an agricultural base are already present here. As for the ancestral rule you mentioned, I know about it too. They truly won't leave the village easily. But have you considered this? If they don't want to leave, then they don't have to. For agricultural development, experienced farmers like them are indispensable. We can hire them directly to train our personnel. Let our people learn farming techniques and knowledge from them. In no time, we won't need to worry about staffing. At the same time, villagers will gain stable incomes and no longer rely solely on subsistence farming for survival. As she listened, Yanchi kept nodding, her eyes sparkling with admiration fixed on Fang Shuo. She realized that every time he spoke seriously, he became especially charming. Since the round trip had taken a long time, by the time they returned to the city, it was already evening. Fang Shuo quickly went to the school to pick up Guogua. It was dinner time, so he suggested grabbing a casual meal outside before taking Yanchi home. They found a small restaurant near Yanchi's residential complex, ordered a few simple stir-fried dishes, and made do with a casual meal. After finishing her food, Yanchi put down her bowl, glanced at Guogua, then at Fang Shuo, and suddenly said, Boss, raising a child all by yourself must be really tough, right? Fang Shuo smiled. It's fine, I've gotten used to it. Besides, Guogua is quite sensible. I don't have to worry much about her. Boss, since I'm working under you now, if there's anything outside of work where you need help, just say the word. Don't hesitate. Yanchi patted her chest confidently. Fang Shuo nodded. All right, with you saying that, I can rest easy. There might actually be times in the future when I'll need your help. Their relationship was both hierarchical and somewhat like master and apprentice, so there was no need for formality or awkwardness between them. Fang Shuo helped Yanchi earn money, and in return, her helping out with minor tasks was only natural. Yanchi nodded and said, we've got a deal. Boss, I notice you pick up Guogua from school every day. It's quite a commute back and forth. When I'm free, I could easily do it for you. Fang Shuo looked up at her. You? Yanchi grinned. Of course, Guogua and I already know each other. It wouldn't be a problem at all. Hearing this, Fang Shuo felt a flicker of interest. In the future, he might grow increasingly busy, and as a single father, raising a child was indeed challenging. If Yanchi could help pick up Guogua from school, many of his worries would be eased. For example, earlier today, when he went to inspect the mountain village, normally he could have stayed overnight to learn more. But he couldn't. He had to get Guogua after school. Not only that, he had to wrap things up early and rush back to the city before she even finished class. But if someone could relieve him of that responsibility, either picking her up or watching her overnight, the situation would improve significantly. Yanchi gently bit her lower lip and continued. Boss, you're still quite young. Have you ever thought about remarrying, finding someone to take care of the household for you? Fang Shuo froze upon hearing that. In his previous life, after divorcing Lin Fang, he had remarried. Chapter 127, Meeting and Arguing. Meeting his second wife, however, was something that happened more than 10 years later. By then, he had already achieved success in his career and finally met the love of his life. After their marriage, they stayed together until old age. Fang Shuo didn't deliberately look for her, because he dared not do anything that might affect the future too much. Even the smallest change could alter the course and development of what was to come. Besides, matters of fate were best left to unfold naturally. If destiny wasn't ready, forcing it would be useless. So he chose not to actively search, but instead waited quietly for fate to bring them together. Fang Shuo gave a self-mocking smile. Forget it. I don't want to get married just so someone can take care of the household. That wouldn't be fair to her either. And besides, Guogua is still young. I'll wait until she grows up a bit. A faint trace of disappointment flickered in Yanchi's eyes, though it vanished quickly. The three finished their meal soon after. Fang Shuo paid the bill and walked out of the small restaurant, preparing to send Yanchi home. Just then, he heard someone calling his name. Fang Shuo. He turned around and saw Xiao Mei sprinting toward him from a distance. Xiao Mei, what are you doing here? Fang Shuo asked in surprise. When Xiao Mei saw Fang Shuo, a charming smile lit up her face. My house is nearby. Running into you like this. Does this count as fate? As she spoke, her eyes fell on Yanchi standing beside Fang Shuo. At the same time, Yanchi was scrutinizing Xiao Mei, her gaze sweeping up and down. Xiao Mei froze for a moment, frowning as she began examining Yanchi in return. After a brief silence, Yanchi suddenly pointed at Xiao Mei as if discovering something new. Oh, it's you. You're the one who called to yell at people. Xiao Mei's eyes widened in realization as she pointed back. You're that girl who answered the phone. Yanchi huffed and complained to Fang Shuo. Boss, that day it was her. She called without even saying who she was and started shouting right away. Xiao Mei frowned and snapped. Don't make things up. Your attitude was terrible too. Stay away from him. Stop clinging so close. Yanchi shot back. What's it to you? Who even are you to him, minding everyone's business like that? Xiao Mei opened her mouth but couldn't find the words. Right? She wasn't even considered a friend of Fang Shuo's. Yet seeing how intimate Yanchi was with Fang Shuo made her blood boil. Fang Shuo had no idea why these two started arguing the moment they met. Still, this was a public street. If they kept going, it would draw a crowd and cause a scene. So he pulled Yanqi slightly aside. Alright, Xiao Yezi, that's enough. Xiao Mei is Lin Fang's close friend. We've met before. Xiao Mei corrected sharply. I've already cut ties with Lin Fang. I have nothing to do with her anymore. Fang Shuo didn't pursue the topic. Instead, he said to Xiao Mei, we just finished eating and are heading back now. Please excuse us, we're leaving. With that, he led Yanqi and Guogua to the car. Xiao Mei hesitated briefly, then rushed over and knocked on the car window. Fang Shuo lowered it. What is it? You've helped me several times, and I've never gotten the chance to thank you properly. How about this? I'll treat you and Guogua to a nice meal this weekend. What do you think? Upon hearing there'd be a feast, Guogua immediately asked, really? Aunt Xiao, what are you going to take us to eat? Xiao Mei laughed. Whatever you want to eat. Annie will take you there. How about Western food? Steak, lamb chops, it's all up to you. Guogua clapped her hands excitedly. Great. I love steak the most. Fang Shuo replied coolly. We'll see. If I'm free, we might go. If not, then forget it. As he spoke, he pressed the accelerator, rolled up the window, and slowly drove off. Before leaving, Yanqi stuck her tongue out at Xiao Mei, making the latter stomp her foot in anger. Only after Xiao Mei was completely out of sight did Yanqi ask, Boss, you'd better watch out for that woman. I really feel like she has bad intentions toward you. Fang Shuo ignored her, simply saying, stop talking nonsense. Use that brain power to think about our agricultural base instead. Yanqi stuck her tongue out again and muttered, okay. The next day, Fang Shuo was about to take Guogua to school. As they reached the entrance of the residential compound, they ran into Long Wanqing returning from outside. Judging by appearances, she hadn't come back last night. Must have been busy with something? Seeing Long Wanqing, Guogua stretched out her arms. Sister. Long Wanqing picked her up and smiled. Little Guogua, going to school? Guogua nodded. Yeah. By the way, Long Wanqing said firmly. Are there still bullies at school bothering you? If anyone dares to pick on you, tell me right away. I'll go beat them up for you. Guogua shook her head. No. Everyone at school is really nice to me. Nobody bullies me. Fang Shuo felt somewhat awkward when he saw Long Wanqing. He had spoken rather harshly last time and had been meaning to apologize ever since. Since they'd run into each other today, it seemed like a good opportunity. He stepped forward and cleared his throat. About last time, I spoke a bit inappropriately. I just want to say I'm sorry. Long Wanqing put Guogua down and gave Fang Shuo a cold look. No need to apologize. What you said wasn't wrong at all. We're just ordinary friends. Nothing more than that. With that, she lifted her leg and strode into the residential compound. Watching her retreating figure, Fang Shuo could only let out a bitter smile. Long Wanqing was indeed petty. The matter was already over, and he had apologized, yet she still refused to forgive him. Clearly, she was still angry. Fang Shuo decided to wait until she cooled down before trying again to make amends. After sending Guogua to school, he called on Hu Yurin and Qian Lai and headed once more to the mountain village on the outskirts of Jiangzhou for another inspection. He brought Hu Yurin because of his extensive experience with agricultural products. Whether this place was suitable for building an agricultural base could be determined by Hu's professional opinion. Qian Lai, broad-minded and well-traveled, had previously run a supermarket and was skilled in dealing with people. Fang Shuo hoped Qian Lai could gather some useful information about the village. At the very least, they needed to find out what exactly the ancestral rule left behind by the villagers actually was. Upon arrival, the village chief greeted them again. Fang Shuo and Hu Yurin followed the chief to inspect the farmland and forests on the mountain, while Qian Lai stayed behind in the village to collect information. After spending the entire day exploring every corner of the village, the three returned to the city. Brother Fang, you specifically called me and old Qian out here to this mountain village. What's your real intention? I can't help but feel you're planning something big. Hu Yurin asked. Having worked alongside Fang Shuo for quite some time now, he had started thinking more deeply. Plus, Fang Shuo never did anything without purpose, so instinctively, he sensed another major move was coming. Fang Shuo didn't intend to keep it from them. Straightforwardly, he said, I want to build an agricultural base. Hu Yurin and Qian Lai stared at him in shock. An agricultural base? Chapter 128, Narrow Vision. Exactly, the agricultural base. Fang Shuo said confidently. Actually, I've been thinking about this for a while. It's definitely promising. Forget everything else. Old Hu, you've been a distributor of agricultural products for so many years. What do you think about this industry? Hu Yurin thought for a moment and replied. Well, as far as prospects go, there's definitely potential. Food is essential to people. Meals won't ever stop being needed. But if you're asking whether it can make big money, I wouldn't be so sure. Look at me. I've done this for years, yet the money I've made pales in comparison to what I'm earning now. Fang Shuo smiled and said, that's because you've only been doing small-scale operations, which is why you haven't earned much. Any industry needs to reach a certain scale before real profits can be made. Let me give you an example. A street vegetable vendor might sell no more than 300 jin of produce a day, making just 1 or 2 kuai per jin. At most, they clear 10,000 kuai a month, tops. But switch to an agricultural base that ships out 30,000 jin daily. Even with just 1 or 2 kuai profit per jin, monthly profit reaches 1 million. The old farmers markets, today's Jiangzhou Agricultural Products Company. Just green leafy vegetables alone amount to millions of jin passing through their hands every single day. How many people live in Jiangzhou? If each person eats 1 jin of vegetables per day, what kind of volume does that represent? We don't even need to be greedy. Just 2 or 3 mao profit per jin. Can you imagine how terrifying those profits would be? Both Hu Yurin and Qian Lai were sharp-minded people who had long been involved in business, so naturally, they understood calculations well. However, They had never considered what Feng Shuo was describing until now. But upon hearing him speak, they suddenly realized how narrow their previous vision had been. Indeed, establishing an agricultural base was clearly a highly promising venture. After carefully running the numbers themselves, both became visibly excited. They exchanged glances, faces lit up with enthusiasm, and said, "Brother Feng, this is going to be huge. If we actually pull this off, we could earn a fortune each year." Feng Shuo nodded and said, "That's exactly why I brought you guys to investigate that little mountain village earlier. I'd already visited once before. This time I brought you along specifically to hear your opinions." Hu Yurin pondered for a moment and said, "The climate here suits cultivation well, humidity is sufficient, and because it's on the mountain, sunlight exposure is ample, very suitable for crop growth. However, this village is too small to allow large-scale farming, and if we wanted to expand into the hills, we'd need official approval from local authorities. That part one know nothing about. I'm completely out of my depth." Feng Shuo chuckled. "Have you forgotten old Chen?" Hu Yurin paused, then suddenly slapped his thigh. "All right, Chen Dao works in real estate. He's an absolute expert when it comes to land use approvals." Feng Shuo added, "Besides old Chen, he also has a friend named Xiao Xuejing. This man must have some connections, otherwise he wouldn't be able to develop properties in downtown areas. If Chen doesn't work out, we can try reaching out to him." Qianlai clapped his hands in delight and laughed. "Brother Feng, I've noticed since teaming up with you, our ventures keep getting bigger and bigger. Back then, I couldn't have imagined that one day I'd actually be running my own agricultural base." Feng Shuo warned, "But let me make one thing clear. Starting an agricultural base requires massive investment. Crop cultivation takes time, and returns during the initial phase will certainly not be high. Only after we've scaled up can we truly start making substantial profits. Besides, this is a business that can be built as a long-term endeavor. The future outlook is absolutely solid." Both Hu Yurin and Qianlai said simultaneously, "Brother Feng, we trust you. Whatever you say goes, we'll follow your lead." With their support, Feng Shuo felt greatly emboldened. To be honest, he knew he couldn't possibly launch such an agricultural base alone. Without capable assistance, it would be impossible. So if Hu Yurin and Qianlai were willing to support him fully, then he could move forward without hesitation. "By the way, old Qian, did you find out? What exactly is the village's ancestral teaching?" Feng Shuo asked. Qianlai answered, "I found out. Apparently, this rule was established by that nobleman surnamed Liang when he first arrived here. He decreed that none of his descendants should ever leave this place. Because a great secret lies hidden within this mountain village, and the Liang family line must remain here generation after generation to protect this great secret. For thousands of years, the villagers have followed this ancestral teaching and stayed put. But after reform and opening up, as national economies steadily grew, prosperity spread across many regions. The younger villagers didn't want to spend their entire lives stuck in this impoverished mountain hamlet, so one by one they left to seek work elsewhere. Of course, there were still some young people who chose to stay behind, but they were few in number. Moreover, many of those who remained had physical disabilities. In other words, they were handicapped." As Feng Shuo listened, he kept nodding slowly. Actually, Feng Shuo didn't really believe in the so-called great secret mentioned in the village's ancestral teaching. Based on his experience, any tradition passed down for thousands of years was bound to have become distorted by now. Perhaps someone had made up this great secret deliberately to prevent villagers from leaving and to keep them tied to the land. In his previous life, until Feng Shuo's death, he'd never heard of any ancient ruins or valuable artifacts being discovered in Jiangzhou City. Beyond that, he couldn't think of anything else significant enough to qualify as a real secret. When they returned to the city, it was already nighttime. Before coming, he had asked Yanqi to pick Guoguo up from school. Even so, he still felt anxious and wanted to get home early to see his daughter. After saying goodbye to Hu Yurin and Qianlai, he hurried straight home. When he walked through the door, he found Yanqi sitting on the sofa, holding Guoguo in her arms. The living room TV was on, but both of them were leaning against each other, fast asleep. Seeing Yanqi sleeping so peacefully, like a child, Feng Shuo couldn't help but smile. Although she carried heavy responsibilities for the family, after all, she was still quite young. Most people her age were still carefree and enjoying life, while she was already working hard to support a household. He didn't wake her. Instead, he quietly fetched a blanket and gently covered her with it. Then, carefully, he picked up Guoguo and carried her back to her room, laying her gently on the bed. Originally, Feng Shuo planned to let Yanqi go home after she woke up, but unexpectedly, she slept right through until dawn. When Feng Shuo stepped out of his room in the morning, Yanqi had just woken up. She looked around in surprise and suddenly remembered, after picking up Guoguo yesterday, she had waited for Feng Shuo to come back and accidentally dozed off. And when she finally woke up, it was already morning. She said somewhat embarrassedly, "Big brother, I fell asleep. Why didn't you wake me up when you came back?" Feng Shuo replied calmly, "You were sleeping so soundly, I didn't have the heart to wake you. Making you sleep on the couch must have been uncomfortable. Sorry about that." Yanqi quickly shook her head. No, not at all. Your couch is more comfortable than my bed at home." That wasn't flattery either. Due to her poor family conditions, the bed Yanqi slept on was a wooden plank bed, far from comfortable. Chapter 129, Establishing a Company. Feng Shuo didn't dwell on the topic. He went to the kitchen and prepared breakfast. After Guoguo woke up, the three of them sat down together to eat. After finishing breakfast, Yanqi offered to help clean up. She moved quickly and efficiently, clearing the table and washing the dishes in no time. Feng Shuo felt a bit awkward and said, "Thanks, Xiao Yezi. I hate to trouble you with the dishes. Yanchi smiled. You cooked breakfast for me. Washing the dishes is only fair. She thought for a moment and added, Boss, since I don't have anything going on these days, how about I pick Guoguo up from school from now on? That way, you can focus on your business without distraction. Feng Shuo shook his head. No way, that'd be too much trouble for you. Besides, my schedule works perfectly fine as it is. I don't need any help. And remember, I brought you on board to build a business with me, not to be a housekeeper, got it? Yanchi stuck her tongue out playfully. Okay, I get it. Suddenly, Guoguo spoke up. Dad, can Wanqing's sister pick me up from school from now on? Without hesitation, Feng Shuo refused. No, that won't work. She's even busier than I am. We can't just burden her like that. Guoguo looked disappointed and simply replied,